Hello guys, welcome to Uzumaki Legends. In this video we will see, what if Naruto died and returned after 4 years to destroy Madara's empire? Naruto x Kushina, Part 1. If you enjoy these kinds of fanfics, please hit the like button and subscribe the channel for more fanfics like this. And now without any further delay, let's start the fanfic. 4 years later, His Majesty will now enter. The strong, loud voice of a royal guard boomed in the large halls of the imperial palace. The hundreds of people standing in the giant hall were patiently waiting for their leader to arrive. There was one thing which each and every person had in common. All of them were nervous and had their eyes bowed in submission. None of them dared to look that man in the eye. As a testament to the power wielded by this man, the 5 previous daimyos of the once powerful 5 nations, fire, water, wind, lightning and earth, were currently bound in chains and were kneeling on the ground. Behind these vanquished leaders, stood a firing squad of 5 commandos. Dressed in white-colored metallic armor and light white-colored pants, each of these soldiers had swords strapped on their backs, while their faces were covered by white T-shaped visor masks. The ARC Trooper Corps, a single cohesive military army of 30,000 disciplined, strong soldiers. These troopers were the main force of the Imperial Empire, and were the ones who had played a fundamental role in the complete destruction of the ninja world. If the people in the room were scared of these soldiers, then the sound of footsteps made them freeze immediately. A tall man slowly entered the room. He was light-skinned and had waist-length spiky black-colored hair. He was wearing an elegant blue-colored shirt and dark black pants. A bright shining red armor could be seen on his chest while a pitch-black flamboyant coat was resting on his shoulders. There were cracks on the face of his skin and even on his body, but the most terrifying thing about this man were his dark red murderous eyes. The Immortal Emperor. Yes, this was the name given to him by the people of the world. A name befitting him indeed, after all he was immortal. He gracefully came forward and elegantly sat on his magnificent throne, his cold eyes looking at the weak people before him with little interest. Until his eyes shifted his attention towards the defeated daimyos and the cameras that were broadcasting this ceremony over the entire world. I am the first emperor, Madara Uchiha. Every person in the room dutifully bowed on hearing those words. Only the ARC troopers stood in attention, keeping an eye on the defeated daimyos who had almost shit their pants in fear. But the soldiers did give a short bow in respect to their glorious leader. A swift gust of wind blew across the vast room, as 8 warriors appeared beside Madara. Dressed in their dark cloaks with red clouds, the former members of the Akatsuki stood proudly before their new leader. Pain appeared to be stoic as usual, and the same could be said for Konan. Deidara had a small grin on his face, as he was getting a chance to display his art to the whole world. While Sasori did appreciate the opportunity, but chose to remain silent and settled for observing the people in front of them. Contrary to the others, Orochimaru had his eyes settled on Madara. To think all of his dreams for knowledge were finally being fulfilled due to this man. Kukuzu was keenly observing the kneeling daimyos, his greedy eyes fixed on the gold ornaments that were still on those wretched humans' bodies. Hidan was the only one who seemed a little anxious. His hands were tightly gripping the giant scythe in his hand as he glared at the ARC troopers that were stealing his glory. Damn it, 5 daimyos would make a wonderful sacrifice for Jashin-sama, and he was being robbed of such pleasure. However, he and the other members of the former Akatsuki refrained from saying another word, daring not to interrupt their leader's speech. Allow me to introduce my holy knights. The leaders of the glorious Imperial Army, said Madara proudly. Several flashes happened as the photographers clicked the images of the strongest warriors of their planet. The people who had single-handedly destroyed the entire ninja world, and it was indeed a rare moment for all of them to be seen together. But then again, the execution of 5 previous daimyos was a huge event. The prisoners flinched when Madara got up from his seat and confidently looked at the entire world that was watching the last remnants of the ninja world about to be extinguished. Please, spare us, Madara-sama, begged the wind daimyo, his terrified face covered in sweat as he fearfully looked at Madara. We surrender, there is no need to kill us, pleaded the fire daimyo, with fake tears dropping from his eyes. It was those damned ninja, they forced us to fight against you. Explained the water daimyo quickly, hoping to save himself from this man's wrath. We will do anything you want, your highness. Pledged the lightning daimyo, trying his best to show his faith in the Uchiha who just stared at him with disdain evident in his eyes. We want to serve the great imperial empire, please give us a chance. Requested the earth daimyo. Madara simply made a small disappointed HN, before raising a single finger of his right hand. The next second the heads of the 5 daimyos rolled on the floor as they ARC troopers beheaded them with their sharp swords. There was a series of resounding thuds as the dismembered bodies fell down on the floor and blood started staining the already bright red-colored carpet on the floor. This world is full of lies, roared Madara, his strong powerful voice sending shivers down everyone's hearts. I don't want to die, I will not lie, all these are mere lies which the weak have used for millennium to protect themselves. Absolute silence reigned in the vast hall, with each and every person intently listening to Madara's each and every word. Not to mention, the millions who had currently watched the event through their TV sets. It was an end of the old world. There is only one truth: survival of the fittest. That's why one must devour all these lies, along with those who chose to adhere by these false beliefs, declared Madara in a staunch, strict voice. The command befitting for the leader of their world. The Imperial Empire has destroyed the world of lies which was known as the Ninja World. From today, we mark the beginning of a new era. The Imperial Empire will create a new world free of lies, deception and deceit that the corrupt ninja world had carelessly spawned on this world. A world of victors, a world of love, a world of peace. A world where people can truly show their guts to each other and not hide behind lies. We will create such a world. Black Zetsu had a feral grin on his face as he watched a significant victory unfold before his eyes. Even White Zetsu had a smile on his weird face. After all, they had almost destroyed the old world. And the Akatsuki had achieved its dream. World domination. It seemed you were more useful than I thought, Obito, thought Black Zetsu bemusedly, as he remembered the fallen, previous leader of the Akatsuki. It was still hard to believe that 4 long years had passed since that night. And a lot of things had changed. To all those fools who stand in the way of peace, the Imperial Empire will bring peace to this world. And I, Uchiha Madara, will destroy anyone who stands in our way, be it a man, woman, child, commanded Madara, and activated his Mangekyo while giving a murderous glare to the cameras. The power of his eyes combined with the execution of the daimyos had sent an extremely strong message to the resistance members. Soon, victory will be his. All hail, Madara, all hail, Madara, all hail, Madara. The entire room erupted into loud chants of his name, as a small smirk came on the warrior's face. 1 hour later, Madara hastily threw away that annoying cloak on his back as he entered his personal living room. Turning back, he settled to give a threatening glare at Black Zetsu, who just had an amused grin on his face. Zetsu, how long are we supposed to play this game? Asked Madara tiredly, frustration clearly evident on the man's face. I understand it's been 4 years since we started this campaign, and despite how annoying it was, we did manage to wipe out the troublesome 5 great ninja villages, along with their nations. Now, we can move towards the completion of our plan without any kind of solid resistance. It would have been stupid if the entire world would have united against us, explained White Zetsu in a neutral voice, as a mischievous smirk came on Madara's lips. Well, that would have been a good fight. Kids, these days don't know a goddamn battle dance, complained Madara. You did seem to enjoy your battle with Hiruzen Sarutobi, and Yagura, suggested White Zetsu rhetorically. Yeah, right before he chopped the old man's Hiruzen neck and sealed the Jinchuriki's Yagura Biju inside the Gedo Mizu, killing the former Mizukage, taunted Black Zetsu, as a small HN was heard from Madara. That was satisfying. White Zetsu could only sigh on his master's behavior. If there was one thing that annoyed him was Madara's addiction for good fights. He wondered just how was the man able to survive for so many years during the Clan Wars era. But then again, this was the real Madara Uchiha. And unlike his former leader, this man was the real deal. He actually shivered a little as he remembered the gigantic meteors that Madara had dropped on Iwa, destroying the village completely. Even the fool Onoki had tried hard to save his village, but was severely wounded. And if not for his granddaughter hauling the man away, he would have been buried in the crater which was known as Iwa a few years back. Although he doubted Onoki would have survived the life-threatening wounds which Madara gave him. They had not received any information about the former cage since past 2 years, and considering his age it was fair to assume that he was probably dead. Is there nobody strong enough to give a challenge? You shouldn't have revived me so early, scolded Madara, as another person stepped inside the room. A frown came on Madara's face as he saw the snake Sanin giving him a small nod. He didn't trust this man one bit. But Orochimaru was the one who found his remains. How he did still remains a mystery. What the hell was Obito doing? And revived him as an Edo Tensei. Dismissing those thoughts, he tried to focus his attention on the former Konoha ninja. He was sure the snake was waiting for the right moment to strike, but that man had no idea about the power of Uchiha Madara. The day he tries to betray him would be his last. Till then, he needed the man for locating the Uzumaki temple and undo that seal. I have obtained some leads about the whereabouts of those masks, said Orochimaru tersely. It was fair to say that he and Madara didn't like each other. For him the man was nothing more than a overstrong brute, while his counterpart thought he was a creepy, pedophile scientist. My intel suggests the Shinigami masks are being kept hidden by the resistance members of Konoha. A weapon that powerful would surely be under the supervision of Blacklight, said Orochimaru confidently, as Madara sighed tiredly. Blacklight, that organization had caused nothing but trouble for him. Those little miscreants had started a guerrilla war with his empire, and were the strongest opposition that was standing against the might of the Imperial Empire. Though short in numbers, he had seen videos of their battles with the ARC troopers of the Empire. To say those young ninja were talented would be an understatement, especially Rengoku the Flash, and Mikasa the Ice Queen. Both of these kunoichi were important members of the Allied Forces resistance that was opposing the Empire. The resistance was comprised of those ninja who had survived the Holocaust which the Akatsuki had launched on the ninja world. They were being led by Kakashi Hatake, an important shinobi of the now destroyed Konoha village. It was funny that despite losing their villages, the ninjas continued to stick to their system of cages and ranks. Although it only strengthened Madara's resolve to wipe them out, it was time to start a new world and those who were against him had to die. And it was only a few more weeks before the resistance would fall. They just didn't have the numbers to go up against the Imperial Empire. Not to mention they lacked resources, money, manpower and so much more. Madara had made sure to create so much destruction that it created an intense fear in the hearts of the people. At first, the people of the world had openly opposed him, but since they lost their cages and were attacked by the Akatsuki at once, they suffered tremendous losses. Obito, you may have been an emotional idiot. But your plan was flawless. This way there is at least slim to no resistance against the fulfillment of our plan. At least, you were useful in this way. If only you had not taken the Kyuubi down in your invasion of Konoha, thought Madara bitterly. When he had learned that half of the Kyuubi had been sealed in the Shinigami's belly, Madara went mad with rage. He destroyed the entire sand village, before he could calm his nerves. He needed every Biju to fulfill his plan with full efficiency. So far the Akatsuki had been able to capture the Nibi 2, Sanbi 3, and Rokubi 6 tails. The rest of the Biju's Jinchuriki had gone into hiding, except for Yonbi 4 and Gobi 5 tails, which had been destroyed in the previous war when their containers were killed in a mission. But thankfully, after these years those beasts were being born again and he would capture them, leading to fulfillment of his plan. Does anyone else knows about the power that Mask possesses? Questioned White Zetsu curiously, halting Madara's train of thoughts as he refocused his attention on Orochimaru, who apparently got a small frown on his face. Yes, Jiraiya and Tsunade knew about it, and so did Kushina Uzumaki. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki, who has the remaining half of that beast within her? Asked Madara seriously, and gained an affirmative nod from his subordinate. Yes, it seems they are trying their best to prevent us from unsealing the Kyuubi. And for once I agree with them, the Kyuubi was sealed within Naruto. If you bring the Biju back, then you would also bring the boy back. And that would be quite troublesome, advised Orochimaru seriously, and Madara was intrigued on seeing the trouble on both Orochimaru and Zetsu's faces. It seems, all of you are traumatized by Naruto. What did he do to warrant this much fear? Questioned Madara curiously. It had always intrigued him that almost every member of the Akatsuki was extremely wary of Naruto. He had seen the blood clones that were made from the boy, and they were quite powerful. But that was certainly not enough to warrant this much concern. Well, let's see. Naruto made Konoha win an impossible war against 3 great ninja villages, successfully infiltrated the Akatsuki and fooled all of us including your protege Obito, stopped a civil war in the Leaf, sealed your younger brother Izuna, defeated and killed Obito while ultimately sealing the Kyuubi in hell. That boy single-handedly fucked up every single one of your plans and those of the Akatsuki. If that is not enough information to be wary of him, then I don't know what is, explained Orochimaru irritatedly, and he didn't flinch when Madara glared at him for mentioning Izuna's name. Apparently, the man was still sore over that incident. Sometimes, he just wanted to strangle this geezer Uchiha. Granted, Madara was a god during battles, but the success they had achieved so far was only due to Obito's plan. It was Obito's strategies that played a fundamental role in establishing the Imperial Empire and allowing the Akatsuki to emerge from the shadows and take control over the world. Even in death, Obito forced Naruto to die with him, effectively taking out the only hope of the ninja world. Orochimaru didn't admire the man, but he could respect the tactical knowledge and skill displayed by the previous Akatsuki leader. However, the same feeling did not arise in his mind when he looked at the real Madara. The man considered everyone inferior to him, and only believed that Hashirama Senju was his equal. Sometimes, Orochimaru wished that Naruto was alive just to show this arrogant bastard a thing or two. He's right, Naruto was a powerful cage-level ninja, but most of all he was a master tactician and one of the greatest military commanders of Konoha. The name Namikaze was enough to lift the morale of the ninja of Konoha during the Fourth Great Ninja War. Even now, the resistance is fighting because they believe in Naruto's younger brother, Itachi Namikaze, explained Black Zetsu, and Madara didn't miss the gleam in Orochimaru's eyes. So, the man still wanted to capture the Namikaze in order to take over his body. Guess, he was never going to change. Itachi's a fighter, not a military commander like his brother. Granted, he can cause great havoc on the enemy forces, and has become stronger in the past 4 years. But it still does not change the fact that the resistance is on the verge of defeat. In peacetime, Itachi would have been a great leader, but this is war and everyone knows the boy can't defeat our empire on his own, reassured Black Zetsu confidently, easing the tension among his comrades. Everyone became silent for a few minutes, trying to understand the situation they were in until Madara casted his gaze towards Orochimaru. If Naruto was this much powerful, and if the resistance has those Shinigami masks, then why didn't they revive him? Asked Madara sharply, gaining a creepy smile from Orochimaru. Strategic sacrifice, meaning, if they revive him, they also bring the sealed Kyuubi back in this world. Kushina was a former member of the Akatsuki. She knows we need every Biju at their full power to accomplish our plan. As such, they will not bring him back, or they don't know how to bring him back. It is either of these situations, explained Orochimaru in detail. A tired sigh escaped from Madara's lips as he started walking away from the group, but stopped at the door of the room and glared at Orochimaru. You have 4 months to find those masks and bring me the sealed Kyuubi. The other members of the Akatsuki will continue to search for the remaining Jinchuriki that are hiding. Get it done, or I will start the Moon Eye plan regardless and you won't be alive to see it. Unknown location. In a dark cave, several people could be seen taking refuge. A few men could be seen guarding the entrance, their vigilant Byakugan observing each and every corner of their perimeter. Shikamaru Nara had seen many things in his life, from witnessing the Kyuubi attack to the destruction of his village. Even then, he was confident that one day they would be successful in turning the tide against the Akatsuki, only to be proven wrong when the Imperial Empire rose. The terror Madara unleashed by destroying 5 great ninja villages forced the remaining population of the world to surrender. Also, the fact that a severe winter had plagued their world since past 4 years also played an important role in the destruction of the ninja world. More than 80% of the world was covered in snow, resources were becoming scarce. Soon, people started losing the will to fight and survival took priority against oppression and freedom. And if the execution of the daimyos was indeed true, then the resistance lost the last monetary and resource support being provided to them. With the force of the Imperial Empire hunting them, and the severe winter plaguing the ninja world, their days were numbered. His eyes shifted towards a tall blonde boy who had become the last hope for their people. Things had changed a lot for Itachi Namikaze. Gone was the young 13-year-old boy who deeply loved his elder brother and aspired to become just like him. In the past, Itachi was quite selfish and only cared about his family. But looking at him now brought a smile on the Nara's lips. Watching him help a young injured boy, while reassuring the boy's mother made Shikamaru gain some of his lost confidence. Hinata, status report. Itachi's voice was stoic and calm, devoid of the aggressiveness that he possessed in the past. He patiently looked at his teammate. Years had been kind on Hinata Hyuga. She had transformed into a beautiful 17-year-old girl, and had become stronger. Her midnight blue hair now reached up to her waist, and her soft and gentle face had become even more elegant. She was currently wearing an old Chunin vest, that was barely able to hide the girl's large. Shikamaru could only sigh when Itachi just looked at her without any kind of emotion on his face. Everyone in their resistance cell knew the girl loved him. Either Itachi was oblivious to this fact, or just didn't care about her feelings no matter how hard she tried to support him and be his pillar. Ever since the death of his elder brother Itachi changed. Shikamaru could still remember the day when they found Naruto's corpse on the field outside Konoha. The fake Madara, now identified as Obito, was also lying dead beside him and the Kyuubi was gone. That night Itachi lost everything, and with what happened with Minato was the final nail that destroyed the boy as his entire family fell apart. He became cold, distant from others. He still cared about his people, but in a way he became like an exact replica of Tobirama Senju. The perimeter is clear, Itachi-kun. You don't have to worry, reassured Hinata politely, but her smile faltered when he just nodded and shifted his attention towards the map that was lying on the table. You're dismissed, Hinata. Itachi, we have work to do, Hinata. And I'm busy. If I need anything I will let you know, replied Itachi flatly, and stared at her uncaringly. Hinata suppressed the lump in her throat, and gave him a half-hearted smile before returning to her station. Shikamaru walked towards his friend, and was surprised when Sakura and Ino arrived beside their leader. I have healed the injured, it will take them a few days, but they will be fit to fight, said Sakura confidently. Good work. The former member of Team 7 frowned on his short reply. Over these years, a lot of things had changed. Sakura had transformed from a simple girl from a kunoichi family, into the divisional chief medic of the resistance. She was now almost as tall as Itachi. Her silky pink hair had been cut short and now reached up to her neck, with 2 bangs falling across her face. She was wearing a Junin uniform, that was doing an excellent job of concealing her D-cup. Beside her Ino too looked at Itachi with concern evident in her eyes. She was a lieutenant in the communication corps, and was also as tall as Sakura, 5 feet 9 inches. Her face had lost all baby fit, not that she possessed much, and her beautiful blonde hair now reached up her waist and were tied in a ponytail. Itachi sensed Sakura's gaze on him, and looked at her again. What? That's it. Ino smacked her forehead when Sakura lost her cool, and grabbed the boy's hand roughly before dragging him to a secluded corner of the cave. "Troublesome," said Shikamaru tiredly. Why the hell was he caught in this love triangle? He took out a small cigarette from his pocket, and was just about to light it when Ino smacked it away. In that moment, Shikamaru cursed the gods who made women into such troublesome creatures. Itachi roughly freed his hand from Sakura's grip as she finished dragging him inside his personal corner of the cave. It was times like these that reminded him that she had quite the physical strength. Not to mention, the kind heart and understanding nature which she used again and again to break through the barriers he had formed to protect himself. To not feel that pain again. He saw her moving towards a Tonto lying in the corner, making him sigh tiredly. Sakura. But she had made up her mind, and didn't back down as she picked up the weapon and presented it to him. "You miss your brother," said Sakura sympathetically, and didn't flinch when he glared at her. "He's been gone for 4 years now." "It's done," replied Itachi in a cold voice, and started walking away, but she again grabbed his hand. He looked at her angrily, but before he could react or send her away, she enwrapped him in a tight hug. At first, he wanted to get away, but somehow he couldn't. "You're not only my leader but my best friend, and you can't shut me out." "I'm not going to stop," said Sakura with determination. "I don't want to talk about it." "Please, Sakura," requested Itachi, trying his hardest not to become too attached and evade this feeling in his heart. "But I do, and I might say the wrong thing. Even then, I will see to it that you don't shut yourself away from your friends," explained Sakura seriously. "What's your point?" asked Itachi tiredly, and broke the hug a little to look her in the eye. "I know you are in pain, after what happened. But we're there for you, all of us. It's not right that you isolate yourself from us," suggested Sakura, and he averted his eyes in shame as everything she said was indeed true. His cheek went bright red when she left a soft, tender kiss on his forehead. And for once, he was thankful to his brother's face mask for hiding the blush on his cheeks. "We're losing, Sakura. No matter what I do, I can't save this world from Madara," said Itachi sadly, but she just smiled. "You're doing the best you can in the current situation. It may seem hopeless, but I truly believe that we can get past this one day, that one day we will have a future free from Akatsuki. We will get there eventually. You have to believe in it because the people believe in you," explained Sakura patiently. She waited for him, just like she had been waiting since the past 4 years. To everyone else, Itachi seemed like a cold, uncaring person. But she knew what he truly was. He was just a 17-year-old boy who had lost his family and was burdened with the future of the entire world. "I miss him." She smiled on hearing those honest words, and pressed the Tonto close to his heart as he tearfully looked at the weapon that his brother had gifted to him. "He would be proud of you," reassured Sakura, as a tiny sad smile came on his face. "But I still need him," said Itachi sadly, as she gently caressed his cheek with her soft hands. "We all do." Konoha Cemetery. Wild gusts of wind blew across the graveyard of the destroyed Konoha village. The only thing that reminded the world that the village existed once, was this cemetery as well as crumbling Hokage faces. The village was nothing but a ghost town, with its inhabitants abandoning their home 4 years ago. The place was covered in snow everywhere, hiding any trace of the village that once existed. The only place that had remained intact was the Blacklight Cemetery. It was being protected by a secret fuinjutsu that prevented anyone besides Blacklight from getting inside. Even after the fall of Konoha 4 years ago, the Imperial forces had been unable to infiltrate the place, much to the dismay of Orochimaru. And the reason behind it was quite simple. The reason for the Snake Sanin's worries was a grave. However, there was a difference between this grave and the several others beside him. Naruto Namikaze. The name that had terrified Akatsuki to this day was etched on this piece of stone. It was the only grave in the cemetery that still had fresh flowers placed on it, indicating someone regularly visited the fallen shinobi. For the people who had known the boy, they would say he would be at peace since he was lying beside his teacher, Commander Fox, and his best friends, Armin Arlert, and Kotetsu Hagain. The belief would have been true, except the boy was not with his best friends and was instead rotting in hell with his teacher since the past 4 years. Suddenly the wind stopped flowing, and so did the snow falling from the sky. The dark clouds that had concealed the moon behind them disappeared as a bright red-colored moon was visible in the sky. Strange seals started to glow on 2 graves, as the moonlight fell on them. An ear-piercing sound rang across the entire cemetery. The force of this unknown power broke several gravestones before a giant explosion occurred in the area. The very first thing he felt was cold. Extreme cold. His blurry vision started to get more clear with each passing second, and he saw shades of white everywhere. Instinctively, he rubbed his eyes with the help of his fingers and looked again, only to be presented with the same results. He touched the soft yet cold surface on which he was currently sitting, and in a flash he identified it due to the familiar feeling it provided. Snow. As his vision cleared, he saw he was actually sitting on snow. He was bare-chested, making him shiver a little as the cold winds of winter hit his body. Although he was glad for having a dark black-colored jeans covering his lower half of body. It would have been fairly unpleasant if he had to feel the cold winds brush against a sensitive organ. A very sensitive one. A dry chuckle escaped from his lips on thinking about that scenario, but he regretted the action as his throat was extremely dry. Goddamn it, he needed some water. Wait, what? Since when did he need water? He was supposed to be. And then it hit him like a solid punch to his gut. His veteran eyes hastily scanned the surrounding areas and he immediately recognized the buildings of Konoha. He had lived for so many years in this village, that he was practically familiar with its entire layout. And this was definitely Konoha. What the hell? It was the only coherent sentence he could form on seeing the condition of his village, his home. It looked deserted and there were traces of large-scale destruction everywhere, judging from the broken structures of several houses, and the shattering Hokage faces on top of the mountain. This was really Konoha, but he was supposed to be dead, and trapped in the worst place of the entire world. And yet, here he was. Kenshin Shimura was stunned. The scenario before him was just not possible. Not even in his wildest dream, and yet his fingers that were grasping the snow beneath him, and the cold air hitting his chest as well his sharp eyes that were showing him his beloved village, was making him believe that it was really true. He tried to shake his head, hoping this dream would end. Maybe the death god had finally decided to torture him. No. It was not possible. He was not even touched by the monsters of hell, or had to undergo different types of tortures and nightmares, and all other worse kinds of suffering. It was something he wouldn't even wish on his staunch enemies. It was horrible. No, it was terrifying. Even for him, that place had been nothing but a devastating nightmare. Although fortunate enough for not being tortured, the death god really had a strange sense of justice. The only reason he was not being tortured was because he had not killed innocents and was being kept in hell due to the contract. If he could, he wished he had never used the Shiki Fujin Jutsu. Not that he didn't love this village anymore, but the things he had seen had definitely made him question the route he had taken to protect this place. If there was a chance to die for Konoha again, he would probably blow himself up, but never again was he going to use that forbidden jutsu. Then his eyes widened in panic, his heartbeat increasing to extreme levels as he remembered something. Rather, he remembered someone. Naruto. His desperate eyes searched for any trace of the boy whom he loved as much he was his own son. If this was not a dream, and if he was really back, then he had to be with him. No, he couldn't think of coming back here without him. He quickly moved his hands and legs in order to prepare himself to move, as his eyes continued to search his surroundings. On further observation, he found himself sitting inside a cemetery. There were several broken gravestones, and uprooted grass. Turning around, he froze when he saw the name written on the grave behind him. Commander Fox. So, it was not a dream, and neither was he in hell. A series of questions started floating in his mind. His memories of the last few moments in hell were extremely hazy, although he was sure that Naruto had been somewhere near him. How the hell did he manage to escape from hell? More importantly, how did he manage to get his soul back inside his body? He was not even supposed to have a body to return to. As far as he could remember, Blacklight members had their bodies burnt and not buried when they died. And he had been a fucking commander, then why was his body preserved? There was only one possible answer for this. Han, thought Kenshin bitterly, this was no doubt the doing of his father. Han Shimura, or what the man was infamously remembered as, Baku, had always been a strict father. That man had practically total control over Kenshin's entire life. He even disregarded the name, Kenshin, given to him by his beloved mother, and instead named him, Han, as if he was trying to mold his son into a spitting image of himself. And he did it anyway. Kenshin had always been the black sheep of the Shimura clan, at least until he joined Blacklight on his father's orders and achieved the position of commander through his skills. According to his father, he was too soft-hearted and emotional, and Blacklight would straighten him out. Except it got him killed and sealed in hell for years. And he had a feeling his father had something to do with the preservation of his body. That man had been the supreme Blacklight commander. And considering his inflated ego, Kenshin doubted his father would let his body be destroyed. He would rather have his body buried in a cemetery, as a symbol of sacrifice that his family had made for Konoha. No doubt for his personal ambitions, and not because he cared about his son in the slightest. If only his father had seen above his own ambitions, if he had not been so selfish, then maybe things wouldn't have gone this way. Maybe they could have been. I can't think about it right now, thought Kenshin seriously. Right now none of those things were as important to him than the fact that Naruto was missing. He didn't leave the boy in that hell hole, did he? No, he couldn't. Not after everything that place had done to the boy, not after the 300 years of suffering the death god had put the boy's soul through. He wouldn't leave that boy, not even if he had to stay in that hell for all eternity. Kenshin didn't know how much time had passed in this world. The sense of time was certainly different in hell. Not that he could do anything about it now. For all he knew, months could have passed in this world while at the same time an entire century could have passed in the Shinigami's realm. But rather than thinking about the sense of time of the world, he decided to focus on much bigger concerns. Kenshin used every ounce of his strength and shakily got back on his feet. His body was still weak, but in this case he would take whatever support he could muster. For a person who had been dead for years, his body was mysteriously intact and even stronger than before. He could clearly feel the chakra inside his body, and the strengthening of his muscles with every passing moment. It was a miracle. He heard a few cracks from his body, no doubt his muscles were trying to adjust with the newly found weight. He just wished this unpleasant feeling would be over soon. Only if he knew how unlucky he was. Before he could move in order to search for the boy, the entire atmosphere went deadly silent, and if the air had been cold before, then now it had turned extremely chilling. You treacherous human. Oh, Kami, he knew that voice very well. He slowly turned around only to find a pissed-off death god, Shinigami, emerging from a dark portal, and his best guess was the god was out for his soul. He actually flinched beneath the fiery gaze of the entity, but regardless mustered whatever courage he had left. Silence. You have broken every divine rule of my realm. I will. The death god was not allowed to finish his sentence as two people landed in front of Kenshin, and one of them had Naruto in his arms. So, it was you who did this? Growled the death god angrily, and moved to strike the two men that had intervened. Thousands of lightning sparks occurred all over Konoha, and the amount of Ki released by these three monsters made Kenshin fall down on the ground, his hands desperately clutching his chest to breathe in some air. Who the fuck were these guys? And he got his answer when the two new arrivals released giant wings from their backs, and their bodies got covered in different colors of chakra. The one with the blonde hair was carefully holding Naruto in his arms, while the one with darker black hair was intensely staring into a furious Shinigami's eyes. Back off, commanded the one with dark hair, his entire body shrouded in divine red-colored chakra. You dare to defy me, Indra? Asked the death god incredulously, his ghostly eyes boring into the angel-looking man's very soul. This doesn't concern you anymore. Now, get back to your kingdom, ordered the man named Indra, his voice devoid of any form of fear, hesitation. Kenshin was left speechless with Indra's words. Did the man, angel, whatever, knew who the fuck he was pissing off? Nobody ever messed with the death god, and this guy had not only infuriated the ghostly entity but also insulted him in the worst possible way. You stole 2 souls from my realm. You have violated the treaty between our realms. I hereby cast you to hell, announced the death god furiously, but before things could escalate further the blonde one stepped forward with Naruto in his arms. Shinigami-sama, we have not broken any terms of our treaty. I request you to grant me an opportunity to explain our actions, requested the blonde man angel in a polite and respectful manner. Ashura. Kenshin watched as the man named Indra glared at his partner, but Ashura had made up his mind. Please, brother, have faith in me, requested Ashura. Brother, thought Kenshin in surprise, were these two really related to each other? And if they were the ones who rescued his and Naruto's soul from hell, then what did they want from them? You have 1 minute, Ashura. If he doesn't consent, I'm taking this matter in my own hands, declared Indra seriously, completely ignoring the murderous glare the death god was casting upon him. The dark-haired man angel certainly knew how to piss people off, or gods in this case. But it seemed the other brother was a peace-loving person, as he placed Naruto's body on the snowy ground and gave a short apologetic bow to the death god. Surprisingly, the gesture did seem to reduce the frown on the death god's face, albeit a little. My apologies for this mess, Shinigami-sama. But as I've said before, we didn't break any terms of the treaty shared between our realms, stated Ashura diplomatically. Explain yourself. This boy here is Indra Nisan's successor. Keeping his soul in your realm prevents it from being passed on the next generation. He also has a part of me within him, and I'm sure you are aware about the circumstances in the living realm. If the situation in this world continues to escalate in this manner, then the balance between all our realms would be broken, explained Ashura patiently. Kenshin didn't understand what this man angel had just said, but it worked. As the pressure which was being released by the death god vanished, and so did the chakra which the brothers were releasing, allowing him to breathe properly. But this boy and I have a contract. I have fulfilled his wish. By all means, his soul is my property now, replied the death god stubbornly, and this time Indra glared at him. 300 years of torture was not enough for you. You have already caused enough damage, cursed Indra angrily, earning a disgruntled scoff from the death god. The boy was simply paying for his sins. He did murder 300 innocent humans. My rules are the same for everyone. I don't play favorites like you, insulted the death god, and Indra activated his chakra again. He is my protege, and Shinigami or not, I won't let his soul be further destroyed for your twisted sense of justice. And certainly not when the human world is about to fall apart. And whose mistake was it that led this world to this state? I remember it was your and your brother's mistakes, retorted the death god, sarcasm evident in his voice. Which we are trying to rectify. We don't like meddling in your affairs, but this was unavoidable. This world needs him, and for once I agree with Nisan. If you can't see reason, then we would be forced to fight you, and that is something which none of us want at this point of time, explained Ashura calmly. And you committed this treason on your own. Or did you do it on his orders? Asked the death god seriously. For the first time in his entire mortal and spiritual life, Kenshin felt outclassed. He had never believed in the concept of kami, hell, far less an angel. Only to be proven wrong. There were indeed some powers above them after all. Our own, you know he respects you and would never allow such actions. Even if it means complete destruction of the human world, reassured Ashura respectfully. You do know the consequences, right? Asked the death god, trying to confirm the real motive behind their actions. Crystal clear. For once during these 1,000 years, we see a chance for a real change. A solution to end all wars that were started due to our mistakes, but we need this boy for that. And if it means we have to fight you, then we accept it. It is our responsibility to stop the violence unleashed on this world, said Ashura confidently. And if we go down, there will be war. A fight far worse than the crisis of this world, and I assure you I will not be so easy to destroy, warned Indra in a menacing voice. A deadly silence prevailed between the three divine entities. Ashura was patiently waiting for the Shinigami to understand while Indra was ready to attack the god if he continued to get in his way. I see your point, besides I've had enough fun with his soul. But that one goes with me, commanded the death god, and pointed one of his fingers at Kenshin. Thought Kenshin nervously, was he really going back to hell now? The two brothers looked at him for just a second, before Indra turned towards the king of hell. That won't be possible, either. We have plans for him, replied Indra seriously. Unacceptable. Then undo the damage which you have done on this boy's soul, heal him to the state he was before you started torturing his soul for 300 years, requested Ashura smartly. Am I fucking bargaining chip? Thought Kenshin in shock, but then again there was nothing he could do. He only hoped everything ended well for him, he didn't want to go back after coming this far. I won't do that either, as far as this boy's soul is concerned. He deserved the punishment I gave him, stated the death god without any hint of remorse in his voice. Then I'm afraid we are at an impasse. If you could reconsider and do this as a favor, said Ashura but was cut off, when his older brother walked forward and was now looking the death god straight in the eye, mere inches away from his face. We are taking them, you have a problem. Then take it upstairs, or fight with me right here. And the war that would follow between the pure world and hell would be on your head. So, what shall it be? Asked Indra coldly. A staring contest started between the older angel and the god of death, but it seemed Indra was far more determined as the death god sighed after a few moments. Do what you want. Any such transgression again, warned the death god, but Ashura had already arrived to salvage the situation. It won't happen again, you have our word, promised Ashura, and even Indra gave a nod begrudgingly. Very well. Kenshin sighed in relief when the death god disappeared inside his dark portal from where he had arrived a few minutes ago. However, his relief was short-lived when Indra turned towards him while Ashura was looking after Naruto. The damage is quite extensive, brother. He is practically a vegetable right now, explained Ashura disappointedly, while his hands were placed on Naruto's head. Can you do something about it, Ashura? You are the greatest healer in all three realms, suggested Indra, but only gained an apologetic smile from his younger brother. I can heal any wounds to the body, but not to the soul. But I can do one thing, said Ashura hopefully, and Kenshin watched as the man performed a set of unknown hand seals before slamming his hands on Naruto's forehead. A strange set of seals spread across the boy's forehead, the sigils glowed brightly for a few seconds before mysteriously disappearing inside the skin. Indra could only sigh tiredly as he realized what his brother had to do, but as he looked at Kenshin he was a little relieved. It seemed they had to rely on Plan B, after all. Kenshin, commanded Indra, and smirked when the nervous Blacklight commander immediately bowed in front of him. The older angel was satisfied that the man at least had the common sense to understand when he was outclassed, but then again any human would be frightened of him if he could make the death god bow to his demand, even once. You're his teacher, aren't you? Questioned Ashura patiently, trying to ease the nervous man. Yes, I am his teacher and former commander, clarified Kenshin truthfully, and even in this chilling atmosphere he felt a bead of sweat rolling from his forehead. And you're the only one who knows what happened down there with Naruto? Asked Indra sharply, his dark eyes boring into Kenshin's very soul. Yes, answered Kenshin wryly, extremely uncertain about the repercussions his answer would bring on him. The only reason we saved your soul from hell is because we need your help in protecting this boy. The way things are in this world, he might very well be my last successor, explained Indra worriedly, and for the first time Kenshin saw some nervousness in the man's eyes. And after everything that happened down there, Naruto would never leave without you, reassured Ashura with a small smile on his face, and was satisfied when the explanation seemed to ease all of Kenshin's fears. Kenshin's gaze shifted towards the unconscious boy lying on the snowy ground. He looked so different now. In place of a 16-year-old boy, there stood a 20-year-old man. He was nearly 6 feet 4 inches tall and had quite the muscular body, no doubt. Due to Ashura's help, his chest and arms were more broader and lengthier respectively. But the most important thing was his face. He was extremely fair-skinned, his silky blonde hair were now longer and one bang had almost covered one of his eyes. He also had certain portion of his hair highlighted in black color, no doubt. Due to his Uchiha heritage, surprisingly there was a small black-colored beard on his chin. "He's handsome, isn't it?" joked Ashura, making Indra smirk while bringing a smile on Kenshin's face. "Indra-sama, can I ask you something?" asked Kenshin respectfully, as Indra raised one of his eyebrows on being referred as Sama, but then again this man was a human while he was something much more. The title was certainly befitting. "Speak. Why didn't you rescue him from hell before?" asked Kenshin pointedly. For his part, Indra never flinched on that accusation. "We are not allowed to interfere with the living realm and hell as well. Even then, this is the second time we have interfered on this boy and someone else's behalf. We have broken every single rule for their sake, and would have to face the punishment for it," said Indra honestly. "And also due to my insistence. I had faith that my successor would be somehow able to counter the apocalypse that has arrived on this world, but I was wrong," said Ashura shamefully. "You were a fool, Ashura. Your successor is a leader who would flourish in times of peace, not in time of war. He no doubt has your fighting prowess, but he lacks the ruthlessness that is required to defeat the darkness of this world. In order to defeat evil, you sometimes have to become evil itself. And that is something your successor can never do," scolded Indra harshly. "I understand, it was my mistake," said Ashura apologetically, and Kenshin wanted to know who the other successor was, but refrained from asking the question. "Don't be so down, what's done is done. Besides, there was no way we could have rescued Naruto's soul before the Shinigami had finished punishing him for his sins," reassured Indra, trying to save his younger brother from feeling more guilty. "And he was saved from the situation when Kenshin glared at him." "You purposefully let him suffer?" asked Kenshin incredulously, eyes burning with pure rage. "There are limits to even our powers. And every person has to pay for their actions, and Naruto is no exception. He slaughtered an entire village of innocent people. He butchered innocent men, women, children, he didn't even spare infants. Can you give me an explanation that can justify his actions?" asked Indra sharply, and the older angel was satisfied when Kenshin averted his eyes. No doubt the man had no answer for the question. "If you think he is so evil, then why did you even bother saving him?" asked Kenshin bitterly, and Ashura was pleased on seeing the affection which the teacher had for his student. It only proved that their choice of saving this man was right, because even after knowing the boy's sins he was still willing to fight for him. Because he overcame the darkness, the hatred, the evil that burned in his heart. Even in the face of death, he chose sacrifice instead of revenge. Put forward the future of others before the pain in his heart. Naruto chose to give the ninja world a chance at the cost of his own life, despite hating this world and its system. He's a hero and a villain at the same time. A person who understands the light and dark sides, and has been through both of them. In order to establish balance in this world, and counter the darkness that has risen, this world needs his help once again. He has sinned, but he has also saved and protected. And for these reasons, we are willing to risk everything for him, explained Indra proudly, while giving a hesitant glance towards his unconscious successor. Out of all his transmigrants, it was fair to say that he cared for Naruto the most. "I see," said Kenshin happily. "Right now, the boy has no allies, no friends, no family. He's all alone in this world. That's why we want you to become his shield and sword. There are certain circumstances that has turned some of the people to hate Naruto, and they may even try to kill him again. We can't protect him anymore, nor can we interfere if something happens to him. It will take some time for him to regain himself. Will you protect him? Will you be his knight?" asked Ashura seriously. "Even the savior of the world needs a protector. Not only are you strong but also the only one who knows everything about him. I understand you just got a new chance to live again, and may want to live it on your own terms. Indra was cut short when Kenshin closed his eyes and walked towards his unconscious student. Ashura carefully observed as the teacher nostalgically looked at his fragile student, while gently ruffling his hair. "He looks like his mother," said Kenshin with a small smile on his face. "I'll never let my comrades die. Arigato, to-san." Memories of their past came flooding back to his mind. He was the first person to witness and understand the darkness inside the boy's heart. But even then, he was the first one to believe in him. And his student had made him proud. He did exactly what Kenshin expected from him. "Instead of drowning yourself in hatred, change this world with your power. Even in the end, you remembered my words and overcame the pain in your heart. You never wavered against any obstacles that came in your way and shouldered every burden that was entrusted on your young shoulders. I can't save the current world, but the only thing I can do is protect the current you, Naruto," thought Kenshin proudly. Ashura was surprised when Kenshin opened his eyes and looked at him. "I accept it. I will protect this boy with my life," promised Kenshin. Indra was relieved after hearing the promise made by the man. He tried his best to hide the tiny smile that came on his face as he looked at the determination in the teacher's eyes. "So, my successor finally gets his protector. Ashura, you win this match," thought Indra bemusedly, as he remembered his brother's successor had an equally worthy and strong protector. It was times like these that made him understand that it was not just a person who can change the world, rather there are several others that help him make the change. He had failed to understand this truth during his mortal life, and always relied on himself only. And the same mistakes were made by all his successors except for this boy. And looking at the love and faith which Kenshin had in Naruto made him proud. "I believe in you, Kenshin." Ashura could not believe what he just heard. Did his brother really say those words? In the 1,000 years that he had known his brother, never once had the man believed in anyone other than himself. Indra never cared for his successors and had no faith in them, but now. "You have changed, Ni-san," thought Ashura happily, and deep down in his heart he knew their father would be proud of his sons. Kenshin gave a firm nod, as Indra spread his wings before rising quickly in the sky. And just like that, the man was gone. The former Blacklight commander was surprised when Ashura placed his hand on his shoulder, and he felt a strange sense of power returning in his body. It was as if his weak body was regaining its strength. "This world still has a chance," said Ashura calmly, as he finished his work on Kenshin's shoulder and casted one last glance at the unconscious Naruto. Kenshin gave a small smile, as Ashura spread his wings and disappeared in the sky. "This will be the last time. We're counting on you." Few hours later, Kenshin sighed tiredly as he lay beside an unconscious Naruto. The angels that had saved them were now gone, and both of them were now left alone in the snow-covered cemetery in the deserted village that was once known as Konoha. While happy for being rescued from hell, Kenshin had no idea what the current state of this world was. Not to mention how much time had passed since both him and Naruto had been dead. Considering the 300 years of torture the Shinigami put Naruto's soul through, and the vegetable remark from Ashura made him extremely worried for the boy. And he had valid reasons behind such concerns. Their only sanctuary in the world was nothing more than a ghost village, with their comrades and families missing. Neither they had any resources or even clothes to survive in this cold winter. Also, he had no idea about the condition Naruto was in. Granted, the boy was alive and seemed stable, but then again the same could not be said for his mind and soul. Kenshin only hoped that whatever Ashura did would be enough to let the boy survive in this changed world. "Kenshin." He froze when he heard that voice. It was weak but still familiar. Turning around, he saw Naruto was awake, and was calmly staring at him. He expected the boy to flinch on waking up in a snow-covered cemetery, but the boy seemed extremely calm. "Where are we?" His question brought the former Blacklight commander out of his dilemma, as he approached his fragile student. Kneeling down, he checked the boy's body for any signs of fever, all the while avoiding the stoic gaze the boy was giving him. "You seem fine. A little weak, maybe," suggested Kenshin, and was intrigued when he received no response from the boy. The Naruto he had known would have asked probably 5 questions by now or tried to assess his surroundings. But the person before him seemed to be completely different. "Pick me up," said Naruto flatly, neither it was an order or a request. Regardless, Kenshin passed one of his hands beneath the boy's back and slowly lifted him up, followed by placing one of the boy's hands over his own shoulders, making him stand properly. Silence followed between the two as Naruto simply stared at the deserted village around him and the destroyed buildings. Kenshin saw the boy narrowing his gaze when he saw the crumbling Hokage faces, specifically the monument of the fourth. But the intrigued look was soon hidden behind the stoic face which the boy had adopted a few moments ago. And it unnerved the former Blacklight commander. No matter how much Naruto tried to hide his emotions in the past, Kenshin had always been able to read his emotions just by looking at his face or in his eyes. But he could not feel the same thing from this boy. He seemed cold. Not that he blamed him, after what happened with him down there. Kenshin doubted Naruto would even be sane without Ashura's help. Deciding to give him some time, Kenshin started walking towards the exit of the cemetery. After all, they just could not stay in the open when such a cold atmosphere was lethal for their survival. They had to find someplace warm. And some good warm clothes too. They had just arrived outside the cemetery when Naruto stiffened, and Kenshin too sensed the uneasy feeling. "We are surrounded. It's a trap," said Naruto calmly, and it was quite unnerving to see the once hyperactive boy so calm and collected. Soon enough they found themselves surrounded from all directions. Their assailants were dressed in dark black-colored samurai armor, and judging from their swords in their hands left little doubt about the type of warriors they were. Kenshin looked towards his student only to find him giving a small nod, and without another word he sat down on the ground. "Slacker," muttered Kenshin, on seeing his student's lack of interest in dealing with their supposed enemies. "You have committed the crime of trespassing on a restricted area. By the power vested in us, by the Imperial Empire, we will execute you right here," announced the leader of the mysterious samurai. "Duh, if only you knew we rose from our graves," thought Kenshin bemusedly, but refrained from passing this information. He saw Naruto's eyes narrowing on hearing the word Empire. The interest in the boy's eyes was enough to show Kenshin that either the boy had some information about this new order, or was familiar with the word. After all, it was the first thing that had interested the boy. Kenshin was grateful to Ashura once more. The divine deity had restored his strength. While not strong enough to wield chakra, he at least had the physical strength to fight a taijutsu battle with these samurai. He saw at least 10 of them, including the leader who had just announced their execution sentence. If only the fool knew who he was messing with. "What are you going to do?" "I'm useless right now," replied the boy casually. Kenshin did raise an eyebrow on the blatant statement. This was certainly not like his student. Naruto would rather die than admit he was useless in a fight. Something was indeed off about him. He was being more honest and straightforward. Was this the effect Ashura had warned him about? The entity had only said Naruto was a vegetable right now. Whether he meant it in terms of his physical strength, mental capacity or what? Stupid divine entities and their stupid riddles, thought Kenshin in frustration. Try not to kill all of them. I want their clothes, said Naruto nonchalantly, and Kenshin face-palmed on hearing the boy's blatant demand. I'm not your servant, scolded Kenshin, as Naruto raised one of his eyebrows. Then don't take their clothes, replied Naruto carelessly, and shrugged his shoulders. What do you think we are? We are great samurai of the glorious empire. You dare insult us, boy, yelled the samurai leader furiously. How dare this brat insult his men and their strength so easily? They were a part of the emperor's forces, no one had dared to defy them till now. But even now the boy looked at him with severe disinterest evident in his eyes. You're boring. That was it. Kenshin cursed his idiotic student, when the samurai leader signaled his soldiers and all of them charged towards them at once. To his surprise, Naruto idly sat on the snowy ground patiently observing the murderous enemy forces approaching towards him. Maybe the boy didn't value his life, but Kenshin had sworn to protect him. To be his shield, and he intended to do that. Gathering his energy, he quickly kicked the ground, sending snow straight into the eyes of the incoming samurai. It was a cheap trick, but then again they were ninjas. Naruto curiously watched as his teacher jumped towards the group of samurai and delivered a strong roundhouse kick, sending 4 of them enemy assailants sailing away. Not bad, complimented Naruto, bringing a small smile on Kenshin's face. For a zombie, the young Namikaze got a small smirk on his lips, when his teacher's eyebrows twitched violently, and he took out the newly found anger by grabbing a nearby samurai in a headlock before mercilessly crushing the man's neck. Touché, teased Naruto, and chuckled when Kenshin lost it. Will you stop it? Asked Kenshin irritatedly. He was supposed to be a mature 28-year-old man, but this 20-year-old brat was easily getting under his skin. Nope. For once, he wished he could have that brooding, emo-ish Naruto back. He was not given much time as another 2 samurai tried to stab him from both sides, but he easily caught the incoming sharp weapons. The former Blacklight commander was quite surprised with the strength of these samurai. They were certainly not pushovers, as they pressed harder to stab his body from both sides. While he saw another samurai jumping high in the air and descending towards him. Shit, cursed Kenshin, as the man was mere inches away from his chest and the shining sword was certainly enough to kill him once again. Bam! A hard snowball was sent straight in the man's face that made him lose momentum and fall flat beneath Kenshin's feet. From a corner of his eye, he saw it was Naruto who had made that strange attack. Using the moment, Kenshin crushed the man's skull with a strong kick, splattering the man's brains on the snowy surface. But it weakened his grip on the swords that the samurai beside him were trying to stab in his chest. As the weapons grazed his skin, he quickly back-flipped high in the air and in a flash stole the weapons of the surprised samurai. They were not given any time to get over their initial shock, as Kenshin severed their heads. 4 down, 6 more to go, said Kenshin excitedly. Maybe it was the thrill of battle or the rush of adrenaline in his body. But he was loving this battle. He tightly grabbed the 2 swords in his hand as he charged straight towards the group of 4 samurai who had just managed to get up back on their feet, after the severe kick he gave them that had sent them sailing away. The first one tried to launch a horizontal slash from his sword, but Kenshin used his greater speed to evade the incoming strike while parrying another sword from the next samurai. The enemy soldier was surprised when Kenshin suddenly dropped the sword, making the ancient warrior slide towards him. Apparently, the man had been applying too much force, and the sudden loss of resistance made him lose balance. And it was all the former Blacklight commander needed, as he stabbed his free hand clean through the man's chest. The man coughed up blood violently, before his shoulders slumped. The sudden demise of their comrade paralyzed the samurai whose sword Kenshin had parried, utilizing the advantage he gave a harsh kick, breaking the man's neck in a flash. Die! Yelled the remaining 2 samurai, as they tried to stab the fierce Blacklight commander from behind. At the very last moment, Kenshin used the man he had stabbed with his hand as a shield, making the enemy's swords pierce the dead man's chest. He quickly removed his bloodied hand from the man's chest and jumped over him, as the surprised samurai looked at him in fear. It was all over in a moment as he cracked their skulls with a sickening strike from his elbows, the lifeless bodies falling down on the ground with a resounding thud. However, his eyes widened in shock when he saw the samurai leader and his remaining lackey about to chop Naruto's head off. I won't make it in time, thought Kenshin worriedly. Slash! Metal pierced skin as blood flew in the air. The swords of the samurai were strongly grabbed by Naruto's hands. The enemy forces were trying hard to just slice the hands that had fiercely grabbed their weapons, but what happened next completely shocked them and Kenshin. The swords were broken in half as Naruto applied a little more force, and without waiting he stabbed the broken blade in the last 2 samurai's heart. Kenshin quickly rushed towards his student as the enemies collapsed on the ground. What unnerved him was the lack of expression on the boy's face. It was as if he didn't even care. Are you all right? Asked Kenshin worriedly, as he glanced at Naruto's bleeding palms. He saw the boy mysteriously glancing at the bodies of the now deceased enemy forces. Kenshin just couldn't understand what was going through his student's mind. The wounds on the boy's palm slowly started to heal, as he got up from the ground as Kenshin immediately moved to support him. His student gave him a thankful nod for the help. Whatever questions Kenshin wanted to ask were left alone as Naruto averted his eyes from him. Understanding the unsaid message of leaving him alone, Kenshin decided to focus on more important matters. He offered one of his swords to Naruto, as the boy accepted the blood-stained weapon without any kind of hesitation. He was worried, not because they had just been ambushed, or because some empire was somehow linked to the current state of his village. Rather, he was more concerned with the changes in Naruto. He was so different from the young boy he once knew, but he also knew what the boy went through down there. His soul was ripped apart, tortured, maimed, and so much more horrible things had been done to him which Kenshin didn't want to remember. Naruto's helpless screams still terrified his heart. The death god had not shown any mercy, even when his student had completely broken down. The boy was tortured till there was nothing left of him, and just when he thought everything was over, the torture would start again. Again. During the first 50-something years of torture, the boy had helplessly screamed for his mother, his brother, his father, for somebody to arrive and rescue him from hell, but alas, his cries went unanswered. It was not as if Kenshin had not tried to save his student, or even request the Shinigami to show him mercy or at the very least reduce his suffering. And he was given the same answer which Indra received a few hours ago. That everyone was equal in the eyes of the death god, and those who had sinned would be punished severely regardless of their noble intentions. The cold bastard didn't believe that the end justified the means. Naruto's only sense of relief would be the occasional moments when Kenshin visited him in his dungeon, when the death god was busy torturing someone else. Even then the merciless god kept harassing the boy through various nightmares. For his part, Naruto remained strong for at least 180 years. Enduring the atrocities committed on his soul, but after that he broke. He just became numb, lost all sense of reality. Devoid of emotions, just an empty soul. He had been in that state for the past century at least, until they were rescued by Indra and Ashura. Kenshin didn't even want to think about the fate of the boy if he had not been rescued. If he had been forced to stay in hell. Whatever cheerful attitude, or the mischievous jabs he was trying to give were just an upfront. A mask which the boy was using, or was it something else? You were quite the fighter back there. You did the right thing, complimented Kenshin, trying to start a conversation. I'm no warrior, sensei. I just want to live a normal life, said Naruto seriously. You want to find out about this empire? Why they are so secretly guarding this place? Asked Kenshin curiously. He knew he had to take things slowly. He didn't want Naruto to snap suddenly and disappear. But to his surprise, the boy refused. It doesn't matter. I rather prefer we go into hiding and live a normal life. But that's my choice, suggested Naruto frankly, and didn't flinch when his teacher narrowed his gaze at him. But, you can go if you want. I don't want to be a burden any more than I already have, answered Naruto frankly, as a tired sigh escaped from his teacher's lips. You're not a burden to me. And like it or not, we will stick together. No matter what choices you make, I'll be by your side, said Kenshin confidently, his eyes shining with determination. And he meant it. When he had vowed to protect the boy, he had forsaken all his previous vows to Konoha and Fire Country. Besides, there was no Konoha anymore. And things had changed in the past few years. He found himself caring more about Naruto's well-being than that of an extinct village. Maybe because Naruto was his favorite student, or it was due to their shared experiences in hell that he wanted to be helpful to the boy. Thanks. The former Blacklight commander was surprised when he heard that word, and looking at the faint smile on Naruto's face made him smile too. There may be some warm clothes in that store. Should we check it out? Offered Naruto, and Kenshin recognized the shop down the right corner of the street. Giving a nod to his student, Both of them walked towards the abandoned place while carefully keeping an eye on their surroundings. As soon as they reached the door, Kenshin made a quick scan of the store but found it completely empty. Grabbing Naruto firmly, he opened the door and entered inside. The place was empty, the counter was broken, and the place where the store owner would have stored his money seemed to be broken and barren. But there were a lot of clothes left in that store, good quality material. Either the people were in a hurry, or just didn't care about saving their investment. Whatever the case, it turned out to be beneficial for them. Kenshin idly wondered how did the samurai sense their presence. Maybe it was due to the gigantic chakra explosions between the two angel brothers and the death god. That kind of disturbance was likely to gather a lot of attention. If that was the case, then more people would be arriving here to check it out. The question was, were they enemies or friends? In any case, he didn't want to wait here to find it out. He scanned the different racks of clothes, trying to find something that would suit his tastes. And there it was. He quickly grabbed a white-colored shirt and a dark black pant. If they were in enemy territory, then these clothes would help him remain invisible most of the time. The color of his shirt would sync in perfectly with the snow, while his dark pant would hide him during night travel where he would take his shirt off. Kenshin also picked up a pair of gloves and boots. As soon as he was finished dressing in his new attire, he turned around only to find Naruto standing patiently in a corner. And the boy's choice of clothing amused his teacher. Instead of any shinobi clothes, the boy was simply wearing a pair of dress shoes, a black suit, a buttoned white striped dress shirt accentuated by a beige trench coat. His face was hidden behind a dark blue-colored face mask, and so were his eyes behind those dark sunglasses. The boy's new outward appearance was radiating a natural calm and serenity which would certainly put people at ease. He didn't look like a person who could kill. Rather, he looked like a plain working-class civilian. And the face mask and sunglasses would do well in hiding the boy's true identity. Naruto sensed the strange look his teacher was giving him, and it irritated him a little bit. "What? You look strange," said Kenshin awkwardly, as the boy simply shrugged his shoulders. "They're warm and soft," replied the boy easily, silencing any further comments his amused teacher wanted to pass. He didn't miss the slight narrowing of his teacher's eyes, as he gave him a warning signal. Grabbing his sword, he quickly took cover behind a rack of clothes, with the same action repeated by Kenshin. They saw a couple of ninja dressed in familiar uniforms arriving outside in the street. It didn't take Kenshin more than a second to recognize that uniform. Of all the people, he never thought the struggle between the divine gods would have attracted the attention of his old special ops units. It was Blacklight. He looked towards Naruto in order to ascertain the boy's reaction, but the boy's face mask and sunglasses prevented him from seeing it. Strangely, his former students' comrades were not wearing their traditional masks, or any masks as a matter of fact. They were dressed in their Blacklight uniforms, and had the familiar 3D gear and kunai launcher with them. "There are 7 of them." He silently communicated the information to his student, who was carefully observing the small squad out in the street. Kenshin was not sure, but he sensed Naruto's gaze fixed on one of the soldiers. Before he could find out who it was, the Blacklight squad busted through the store and pointed their weapons towards him and Naruto. "Drop your weapons." Kenshin chuckled on hearing that idiot's voice, and confidently got up only to come face to face with a terrified Izumo Kamizuki. "Impossible. It can't be. Captain, this is Shadaime." Ignoring the shocked sentences of his comrades, he shifted his gaze towards the familiar tall blonde girl who was staring at him, trying to determine whether he was real or not. Another sound was heard, as the squad cautiously shifted in the east direction as Naruto came forward. He was still clutching the sword in his hand, but it didn't look like he wanted to attack. "Easy there, Rangaku. He's a friend of mine," said Kenshin bemusedly. He was just waiting for her reaction. Kami knew the girl had a thing for his student, which had slowly transformed into something much deeper. She had certainly matured in appearance and strength during these past few years. Rangaku was now almost as tall as Naruto. She had long wavy blonde hair that were reaching up to her back. Her sharp, piercing blue eyes were now shifted towards Naruto, while her full lips were closed in order to prevent the boy from ascertaining her reaction. There was a small beauty mark located under the right side of her mouth, her black light uniform tightly sticking to her body. However, it did little to hide the busty rack which the girl had developed over the years. If Kenshin knew better, he would say they were almost as large as Tsunade's. There was a sword strapped on her back, and a kunai launcher in her arms while the 3D gear was hanging loosely around her legs. The appearance was certainly befitting for Rangaku the Flash, but Kenshin didn't know that his former student was now one of the prominent members of the resistance and one of the most powerful soldiers that was opposing Madara's empire. But what happened next was something which Kenshin had never expected in his wildest dreams. Naruto slowly removed his sunglasses, and judging from the shocked gasp escaping from the girl's lips was enough to show she recognized the person standing before her. However, that was to be expected. What intrigued Kenshin was the words that escaped from Naruto's lips. "Who are you?" It hurt. Those 3 simple words broke her heart. Under any other circumstances, it would have been a normal question, but in this case it butchered every feeling in her heart. It was one thing to not have your love be rewarded, but to completely erase any trace of every feeling, every moment, every memory that they had shared in the past was perhaps the most cruelest thing a girl could face. Rangaku didn't know whether it was the curious look in his eyes, or the burning rage in her heart, but she did the only thing she could in the current situation. The sound of metal clashing against metal was heard, along with the shocked gasps of the people around them as she fired her kunai launcher towards Naruto, and the boy simply crushed her attack with a firm swing of his sword. Everything went to hell after that. Kenshin had jumped towards her, but Izumo and her squad got in the way, as the man collided head-on with them. She braced herself for Naruto's counterattack, and yet, nothing happened. He merely stood there, as calm as ever. His eyes still had that curious expression in them mixed with a little sharpness as he looked at her. His sword was now firmly grasped in his hand and raised in the air, but not once did he move to harm her or the soldiers under her command. "I mean you no harm," exclaimed Naruto carefully, his eyes still boring into her very soul. "You're a clone, I have to eliminate you," replied Rangaku in a stiff, flat voice. For a moment, a curious expression was etched across his semi-hidden face, which was again replaced by the stoic mask from moments ago. "Rangaku, he's no clone. He's Naruto," chided Kenshin urgently, as he desperately tried to free himself from the 6 blacklight that were holding him captive. If not for his weak condition, he would have easily brushed these young soldiers off him. It was one thing to fight against samurai who fought traditionally, but another thing to fight against the most dangerous special ops unit of their world. And he had trained almost all of these young soldiers, as a result none of them would go down so easily. Rangaku-san. She stopped breathing and her heartbeat increased when she heard that voice. His voice. No, she had been deceived before. Her Naruto died 4 years ago, the one standing in front of them was nothing but a mere modified new blood clone trooper. And the fascist empire even had the gall to start the cloning of their former commander, Kenshin aka Commander Fox. Unforgivable. She was just about to put a final end to this painful deception, when the man she once loved appeared right beside her. Even the Blacklight squad as well as Kenshin were stunned with the amount of speed displayed by Naruto. After all, it was one of the rare few moments when someone got this close to Rangaku, who was famous as one of the fastest ninja of their destroyed ninja world. "I don't want to fight and neither do I have any interest in killing you or your soldiers. But don't push me," warned Naruto, and to make his point clear he pressed the tip of his sword making a small scratch on her vest just near her heart. She glanced in his eyes only to freeze in shock. The look in his eyes was cold, murderous. A perfect super soldier ready to kill. A mere killing machine. Just as she lowered her kunai launcher towards the ground, the look in his eyes changed back to their calm, collected manner and he too lowered his sword as a sign of peace. However, he did give a sharp glance to Izumo and the rest of the Blacklight soldiers. "Leave him alone. Neither of us mean you any harm. Stand back and we'll be out of your hair," commanded Naruto, and he saw 2 of the Blacklight glaring at him. Azumo casted a quick glance at Rangaku, and how close Naruto was to his leader. If he didn't back off, things could turn really ugly. Kenshin grumpily got up as Azumo signaled his soldiers to move, and the very next second he glared at Naruto. "You should have told me you were fit to fight," scolded Kenshin, as Naruto sheathed his sword. "Just because I can fight, does not mean that I will fight. Kenshin, I have no interest in the conflicts of this world and neither do I want any unnecessary blood on my hands. The sooner all of you understand this the better," explained Naruto sharply, and started walking away towards the door. Rangaku could only stare helplessly as he walked away from her. Her heart was screaming to her, telling that this was the real Naruto, the man she loved with every fiber in her body. And for once, she decided to listen to her foolish heart. "I'll never let my comrades die." He stopped. A small tear slipped from Rangaku's eyes. There was little doubt left in her heart now. No blood clone trooper of the Empire could ever remember those words. The soldiers of Madara were nothing but mere killing machines, who did not have a single emotion in them. In contrast, the Naruto standing before her was not only different in appearance but also had a certain amount of emotions and morals, which he had displayed during these past few minutes. Otherwise, he would have killed her instantly for attacking him. Or was he just trying to win their trust, to infiltrate one of their resistance cells? Was he a new prototype soldier of the Empire? Was even Kenshin another prototype? No, she refused to believe that. Not only were both of these people sealed in hell for years, they also possessed some of the traits of their past selves. She had to take this gamble, if not for anyone then at least for her and Mikasa's sake. If anything went wrong, then she would take full responsibility for it. At least it would give her closure and dismiss any lingering feelings in her heart. But if it was really him, then, looking at Azumo, the boy too noticed how his former best friend and commander had stopped. Those words which Rangaku just said, were once said by Naruto himself. And only to a selected few friends. Naruto hesitantly turned around and looked at her, expression blank but curious nonetheless. "I've heard that somewhere," said Naruto confidently. He saw the female captain giving him a strange warm smile, and somehow he saw a glimpse of a younger version of her sitting beside with a younger version of him at a riverside. But he dismissed those memories, yet even then he felt a strange connection to her. It was illogical and beyond the realms of science and truth, and even then he wanted it to be true. And it scared him. He could not get attached, no matter what. He even secretly wished Kenshin would leave him alone. That man may be the only friend, teacher he had in this world, but he did not want him to die for his sake. Kenshin loved battles, and the same could not be said for him. He just didn't want to fight anymore. Why couldn't they all just leave him alone from the messy conflicts of their up-world? Why couldn't he get the opportunity to find a small, peaceful piece of land where he could live happily? A place where he could fall in love, marry a woman, have kids, grow old, and then die without any regrets while surrounded by his family. Compared to that wonderful life, there was no value in dying during pointless battles. The world could go itself, for all he cared. He was no savior, no messiah. It may sound selfish, but he was going to live for only his sake from this point. "I need you to come with us," said Rangaku in a much polite and respectful tone, which was completely opposite to her actions a few seconds ago. "No," she blinked in surprise on hearing that answer from him. Her gaze shifted towards Kenshin only to find her teacher have the same surprised expression on his face. "Hey, these are the good guys. I know them, we can trust them," suggested Kenshin, but only gained a negative answer. "Going with them means putting ourselves into more useless violence. It's not worth it." "Kenshin," answered Naruto seriously, as he warily glanced at the nervous blacklight around him. Kenshin was just about to suggest another valid reason to persuade the boy, when Azumo beat him. "You're kidding me, right? You're not even going to meet your mother and little brother?" asked Azumo incredulously, his furious eyes glaring daggers at his best friend. Kenshin cursed his luck. When Naruto's eyes widened in shock as he lost all of his previous confidence and hesitantly glanced at the aggressive blacklight. "What did you say?" asked Naruto pointedly, giving his most intimidating gaze to his former best friend who got a small mischievous glint in his eyes. He had won this match. Or you could just be on your way, but you will never know you have a family. "So, what will it be?" asked Izumo straightforwardly. Rangaku suppressed the small smile that was about to arrive on her lips, as she watched the former two best friends glaring daggers at each other, waiting for the other to cower and back down. But Izumo had the upper hand, and ultimately Naruto's curiosity or remorse got the better of him. "Fine, but anything goes wrong, I'll kill you." "Of course, Naruto," answered Izumo confidently, though he did have a small smirk on his lips for beating his friend. Everyone was surprised when Naruto's eyebrows twitched in annoyance, as he glared at all of them. "It's Naoto, Resistance Base Kagoshima." In a dark room of a hospital, a man could be seen sleeping peacefully on his bed. There were several machines attached to various parts of his body, and a monitor was placed on a nearby stand which regularly updated the man's stable heartbeat. Beside his bed was a small table on which a photo frame was carefully placed. There were 4 people in that photo. One was the man himself standing proudly in his Hokage uniform. Beside him was his lovely wife who was holding their 4-year-old toddler in her arms, and their hands were also placed on another child's shoulder that were standing in front of them. A pair of dark black-colored eyes painfully watched the photo while casting a sad glance at the man in the photo, to the man who was currently sleeping on the bed. It was fair to say that the past 4 years had been extremely cruel on Makoto Namikaze. Her lonely eyes were fixed on her husband who was peacefully sleeping in his bed. Under normal circumstances it would not have much difference, except for the fact that her husband had been sleeping since the past 4 years. One of her sons was dead and sealed in hell for eternity, while her other remaining son was on the front lines, fighting a hopeless war. She could still remember that fateful day that destroyed her happy family. The night where the gods saved her one son, while taking away the other. Flashback. 4 years ago. Makoto could only helplessly stare at Itachi's cold, lifeless body. It had happened so fast. One moment they were preparing to engage Madara, and the next her young son was caught up in the man's trap. Not only was her younger son killed, but another harsh truth was presented to her today. A truth which she had been unable to accept. Madara's words still echoed in her heart, and that look in Naruto's eyes. Emptiness. Was that how he really felt all this time? Was he really living with a hole in his heart? Trying to put up a cheerful attitude for her, hiding the pain in his heart. How could she have missed those fake smiles? Those half-hearted imitations of his past self? No. She didn't want to believe that, in a way she had accepted the fake mask which her son was showing her. It was far more easy than looking at the boy's broken heart. Looking in that hole which she had helped create. And now looking at the fierce battle between her son and Madara proved another point. To any other person, it would look as if Naruto was trying to protect the village, but she was his mother. Despite being away from him, she could feel the pain burning in his heart. The boy was pouring everything out. She wanted to help, but she didn't have the strength or the courage. Not only Naruto's pain, but Itachi's death had completely paralyzed her. "Stop it," said Makoto in a choked voice. She just couldn't handle this pain anymore. She was surprised when a bright little sun mark emerged on Itachi's chest, and slowly the blood on the boy's chest started disappearing. The wounds on the boy's body miraculously closed, as if they were never even there. And his eyes opened. Ka-san. The sun mark stopped glowing and was now visible on the boy's chest, but her eyes were only fixed on his gaze that was looking at her. Itachi. She couldn't believe it. It was a miracle. It was a bloody miracle from Kami. He was really alive. Before both of them could say something, the entire ground shook violently as the Kyuubi was thrashed down violently on the ground. Itachi quickly realized the situation, and got up from the ground ignoring her protest. She tried to question him, but he raised his hand. "I have to help my brother." Surprisingly, That statement only brought a proud smile on her face. Both of them looked at each other for another moment, before Makoto too got up and was now standing beside her son. "Let's go," said Makoto happily, as Itachi saw the barrier around Konoha disappearing. "The barrier disappeared," said Itachi in surprise. Both of them quickly started jumping through several rooftops. What troubled them was the deadly silence that had spread over the entire region, and that was not something one would expect when there was a roaring-tailed beast just outside their village. Makoto saw several Blacklight members rushing towards the place where her elder son was fighting. Their loyalty to her son still surprised her till this day. But Itachi was more concerned with the fact that the Kyuubi was not visible anywhere. Both mother and son quickly crossed the border and were now rushing towards the open field, where several Blacklight soldiers had made a circle and were looking down. Nadime. Makoto's heart sunk when she heard the panicked voice of a Blacklight soldier, and she saw the same fear in Itachi's eyes. They were after all aware of the fact that their brother had been the Nadime Taiko of Blacklight. Itachi quickly stormed ahead, pushing several Blacklight soldiers out of the way. And then he stopped. No, he froze. She arrived moments later and saw where her son's gaze was fixed. Tears were dropping from his eyes as he collapsed on the ground. And then Makoto's gaze shifted and what she saw terrified her very soul. Lying in a river of blood was the body of her own son. There were so many lethal injuries on his body, but what scared her the most were his lifeless eyes which were staring at them. The mark of the death god was implanted on his chest. And then everything went dark. Flashback end. She painfully closed her eyes as she finished reliving that memory. It was perhaps the most unbearable pain for a parent when they outlived their own children. But in her case, the pain had transformed into an agony as not only was her son dead, but sealed in hell. She prayed that the death god at least showed her little boy some mercy. In a way, she was glad Minato was not there to witness that moment, to feel the same pain. Even though Naruto and Minato were not extremely close, it did not rule out the fact that Naruto was Minato's elder son and heir to their clan. And a future leader of Konoha. He was perhaps the star of everyone's eyes, and the ray of hope that promised a better future to their people. Strangely, she did not muster the strength to hate the person due to whom her son was dead. Obito Uchiha. Makoto could not understand how the sweet little boy who dreamed to be Hokage had transformed into the monster known as Madara. That boy was the star of Minato's eyes, his favorite student. Obito was the one who had played a part in bringing her and Minato together, and he also proved out to be the one who was responsible for the death of their son and played an important role in the destruction of Konoha. And the ninja world. You're still here, I see. She turned around and saw her best and oldest friend staring at her sympathetically. Over these years, Kushina was perhaps the only one who didn't change neither in personality or in her appearance. Despite being 34, she had the appearance of a woman in her mid-20s. She was currently dressed in a Junin uniform, her beautiful red hair were freely flowing in the air. Granted, Kushina was 2 years younger than her and Minato, but still. She looked as beautiful as ever. What else is there to do? We're about to lose this war anyway, replied Makoto, despair evident in her eyes as she tightly grasped Minato's hand. Don't talk like that. As long as even one of us is alive, the fight will continue. We will not let Madara and his evil empire succeed in destroying our world, encouraged Kushina, as she came forward and picked up a seat on the side of Minato's bed. You're still naive, Kushi-chan, scolded Makoto, but her tone was not condemning, instead it was quite sad. A small smile came on Makoto's lips as Kushina gently caressed her face with the help of her right hand, while giving her a small, warm smile. Naruto would not have wanted you to be like this, he would want you to fight and protect his dream. After everything that's happened, I can't even say that I knew my son, the real one behind all the masks that he put up for everyone's sake. To protect us from any kind of pain, he continued lying to everyone to the very end, said Makoto sadly. He never lied to you or anyone, said Kushina calmly. I don't understand. The truth was right in front of us, what the war had turned Naruto into. A few of us saw it, a few didn't. But Naruto never lied. It's important, it's fundamental, declared Kushina seriously, while her friend shifted her gaze even deeper towards the ground. You really loved him, didn't you? Asked Makoto calmly, her voice devoid of any scorn, anger, it was just plain acceptance. She watched with a bittersweet smile, as it was now Kushina who averted her eyes from Makoto. It had taken her by surprise when she found out about their relationship and the connection they shared. But never once did it anger her, or made her hate the woman. Makoto had long since left criticizing her son's choice in women. She may or may not approve of them, but her heart refused to interfere in those affairs. Because deep down she knew Naruto loved all three girls, Mikasa, Rangaku and Kushina, equally. For him, it was never just about physical attraction, but he shared a deep emotional bond and love with the three ladies in his life. A bond so deep, that for their future he sacrificed himself. Yes, I loved him. Even now I do, and perhaps it will remain the same for the rest of life, said Kushina sadly. You two would have made quite an exceptional couple, teased Makoto, making her friend blush a little. Makoto, you should have let me use those Shinigami masks. I can bring him back, requested Kushina, and despite the pain in Makoto's eyes she shook her head in negative. It's not a guaranteed successful technique. And even if you manage to free his soul and place it back in his body, it would not be possible to physically revive him. Most of Naruto's vital organs were destroyed in that battle, and even if it was possible I would not allow you to do it. He died to give you a future, to give a future to all of us, and his sacrifice would be meaningless if you died for him. Kushina, you're the only one who has the power to fight against the Empire. The resistance needs you, explained Makoto patiently, as the redhead gave a weak nod. Kushina raised her head to comfort her friend, when a giant explosion rocked the entire hospital. Red lights quickly littered across the corridors as the speakers burst to life. The Imperial forces have launched an attack, we've been found. All hands on deck. I repeat, all hands on deck. With one quick glance towards Minato, both of the kunoichi ran straight towards the corridors. They would defend Naruto's dream, no matter what. With Rangaku, Azuma warily glanced towards Naoto, or rather his best friend, who was either pretending to be someone he was not, or had either lost all his memories. Whatever the case may be, it didn't bode well for them and the resistance. They needed him desperately, but the boy was neither willing to fight or even willing to kill unless extremely necessary. It had been quite an embarrassing situation for him, when his former best friend had secretly asked her about the blonde chick, who happened to be his leader. He had literally choked when Naruto asked if Rangaku was single or not. Of course, the tone of his voice suggested he was joking, but it still made Azuma feel quite uneasy. Not to mention, the sharp glare that he had received from Rangaku preventing him from answering that question. Only if Naruto knew, the girl had been someone close to him in the past. Their little group was currently approaching towards one of their secret bases, where the higher-ups would determine what to do with Kenshin and Naruto. Not only were these two former commanders of Konoha, but were extremely strong and capable military leaders. Besides those facts, Naruto also possessed half of the Kyuubi inside of him, that practically made him Resistance's property. Although he refrained from passing this information to Naruto, Kami knew what the boy would do after he realized this fact. Blacklight Squad 4, the Kagoshima base is under heavy attack. The Imperial forces have crushed our frontal line of defense. Naruto and Kenshin saw the entire Blacklight Squad getting tensed after hearing that communication. He saw Rangaku quickly placing her finger on her own communication device. What's the status? Are the civilians safe? Asked Rangaku quickly. Surprisingly, the girl was calm even in this desperate situation. Negative, the Imperial forces are killing everyone. Those bastards are not even sparing children. Our soldiers are doing what they can to save the civilians. Return to base ASAP. We're on our way. ETA 5 minutes, we also have 2 guests with us. Just get here as fast as you can. We're getting crushed here, they outnumber us 5 to 1. The link was shortly cut after that, as Rangaku turned towards her squad. She also looked towards Kenshin and Naruto, but was disappointed when she only saw her teacher giving an affirmative nod. It seemed only that man wanted to help them. "I'd prefer you let me go. There is no point in risking my life in a pointless battle, besides I have no qualms with the Empire," said Naruto dismissively, and for a moment he saw the girl was extremely hurt by his decision. However, her grief soon turned into rage as she gave a solid punch to his gut, swiftly knocking the air out of his lungs. Even Kenshin didn't stop the furious blonde girl, as Naruto collapsed on the ground. But she didn't stop there, as she roughly grabbed his collar and made him look her straight in the eye. "You really are a coward, aren't you?" asked Rangaku furiously, her fingers leaving gruesome creases on the fabric of his shirt. "The Empire's forces have already surrounded your people and outnumber your forces. It's strategically foolish to engage in such a futile battle. Your useless emotions would only result into the loss of more lives," contradicted Naruto, as her eyes widened in shock. The grip of her fingers around his collar started trembling. "Do you really mean that?" asked Rangaku sadly, and Naruto could not understand why everyone else, including Kenshin, had the same expression on their faces. What the hell was wrong with these people? "Don't try to be heroes. There is no such thing in this world," scolded Naruto, as Rangaku released her grip, making him fall down on the ground. Without another word, she started walking away as the rest of the blacklight quickly sunshined out of sight. Even Kenshin told him, "I'll find you later," and disappeared. The only one that was left now were him and Rangaku. "I believe that you were once a true hero. My Naruto was a hero who protected the weak, fought for those who couldn't defend themselves, bled and died for his comrades." "So, you're wrong and we will never agree," said Rangaku stubbornly, and gave him a disappointed look. "I'm not Naruto, I'm Naoto," yelled Naruto, but it only earned him a sympathetic look from Rangaku. She winced when he hastily got up and turned in the opposite direction, but stopped when he saw her gaze still fixed on him. "You're still Naruto for me, even if you don't remember yourself. Your once strong will is still alive in the people of the resistance, the very same people who are fighting to keep your dream alive. We may be weak, we may be foolish, we may even be fighting a hopeless battle, but we will still fight. And I would not give up, no matter what," announced Rangaku proudly, as a soft, gentle smile came on his face. "Rangaku, you really loved this Naruto, didn't you?" She simply smiled a little, before disappearing in a bright flash, leaving him all alone in the snowy forest. For a few moments, he simply stared in the direction where his group had went, his eyes searching for any sign of Kenshin, but he didn't find or sense the man in the nearby vicinity. Quickly tucking his hands inside his pockets, he slowly started walking away in the opposite direction. The only thing that mattered was survival, nothing else. The sounds of explosions, gunfire, cries of the wounded and screams of the dying rocked the small resistance base. Everywhere people could be seen running, falling, getting shot, stabbed, beheaded, and many worse things. The limited number of resistance squads were trying their level best to fend off the 3,000 ARC troopers that had barged through their home. As far as eyes could see, the resistance members could only see the figures of the cold-blooded ARC troopers of the Empire. While the resistance was tasked with several objectives like defending the base, saving civilians, rescuing the wounded, forming whatever line of defense they could muster. The Empire's forces had only one objective: kill them all. This was the scene which Rangaku and her team witnessed when they arrived. Their people were not being killed, but they were being butchered to the last man, woman, child. Rangaku saw a lone blonde boy charging through the enemy ranks, destroying everyone that came in his way, a small squad of the infamous Konoha 11 inches right behind him. The young teenagers were fighting courageously, but the enemy forces were overwhelming them from all fronts. "Azumo, take the squad towards the north side. Keep those fascist bastards away from the civilians," commanded Rangaku. "As you wish," and in a blink of an eye, the Blacklight squad rushed towards the north side of the base, killing every single clone trooper that came in their way. Kenshin could simply stare in horror as the soldiers dressed in white armor murdered a pair of 10-year-old boys who were running towards their small tent. This was madness. He saw Rangaku giving him a firm nod as she grabbed her kunai launcher, ready to dive into the fight. A torrent of kunai was fired by the clone troopers, as Hinata quickly jumped in front of the incoming projectiles. With great precision she started her clan's technique and deflected the weapons protecting her squad. Sakura quickly followed suit by jumping above her comrade, her hands glowing with chakra as she smashed the snowy ground, killing 5 clone troopers. Choji quickly grabbed 2 blood clone troopers with his giant hands, and mercilessly crushed the captured soldiers, ending their pitiful lives. Meanwhile, Shikamaru had effectively trapped a small platoon of clone troopers with his clan's shadow technique, while Ino was busy defending him from the incoming attacks from all sides. "Hold the line, no matter the costs," yelled Shikamaru worriedly. He had never been so scared in his entire life. There was no strategy coming in his mind that could help in saving his comrades. They were surrounded from all sides, and the enemy were simply too many. "We can't hold them," Shikamaru shouted Kiba frustratedly, as he barely managed to kill an incoming clone trooper. "Kiba, behind you," yelled Shino urgently. The Inuzuka boy turned around only to witness 2 exploding tag landing a few meters away from him. His eyes widened in horror, but it was already too late. Boom! Kiba. The young teenagers froze in terror when their friend was hit by a dangerous blast that sent him several feet away, before the wounded boy crashed in a nearby wall. His dog Akamaru too seemed to have lost consciousness and was bleeding heavily. "Where the hell are the reinforcements?" yelled Sasuke furiously, while continuing to engage the nearby soldiers in a fierce taijutsu battle. "Left flank has collapsed. Right flank is being overrun." Another squad of clone troopers jumped straight towards Sasuke, but were intercepted by a bright yellow flash. The swift slicing of their heads followed suit as Itachi beheaded them with the help of his Tonto. He didn't wait there as he unleashed several exploding tags which landed near the charging enemy forces, as giant explosions ripped them apart. Hidan cursed angrily when he saw 50 of his pawns getting killed in one single strike. He pointed his finger towards the remaining 1,500 clones standing devotedly behind him. There was no way he would lose this battle, even if he had to sacrifice every single one of his soldiers. After all, Madara only cared about victories and never the causalities. And these clones were simply expendable. "All forces, advance, crush these rebels in one go," commanded Hidan desperately, and smirked when he received firm salutes from each and every soldier. "Roger, Roger." He smiled deviously when he saw terrified looks on the faces of the rebels. If previously they were getting stamped, now they would get butchered like stray dogs. If only Madara had given him the permission to kill these people, he could have made so many sacrifices to Jashin-sama today. But no, a knight of the Emperor was far too important. Apparently he was a symbol of the Emperor's strength, and could not die in such a simple cleanup operation. As such, he was given 3,000 sacrificial pawns and ordered to destroy this rebel base. Hardly an exciting assignment when his enemy were this weak and outnumbered. But he or any other member of the Akatsuki didn't have the courage to stand up to that monster known as Uchiha Madara. Madara would destroy him to pieces, even if he could not die so easily. Hidan preferred to keep his head intact, instead of being buried under a meteor like Iwa. He smiled when the massive clone army eliminated several resistance members, but the happiness was short-lived when Itachi started attacking his forces with every ounce of his strength. "Fight till your last breath." The disheartened rebel soldiers gained a little confidence, and instead of retreating they charged head-on towards Hidan's soldiers. "Hidan-sama, our north flank is collapsing," informed a clone captain, and Hidan gritted his teeth in frustration when he saw a blacklight squad butchering his men with the help of their kunai launchers. "Move forward, if we lose this place our forces will be eliminated," ordered Izumo, while stabbing a nearby enemy straight in the heart. Hidan felt a bead of sweat roll down on his forehead when he saw Kushina and Makoto arriving on the battlefield. He was well aware of the power these two possessed, and if these two were his opponent, then the massive army under his command would probably not be enough to kill them. If that was the case, then he would simply divert their attention from him. It was time for Plan B. "Captain, bring in the Valkyrie squadron. Bomb these bastards back to Stone Age," gloated Hidan, and could not suppress his grin when he saw the two kunoichi getting nervous as at least 100 birds were visible in the sky. The bombing fleet of the Empire would certainly keep them on the defensive. And leading them was none other than Deidara, who had a mad grin on his face. It was time for art. Kushina could not believe what she was seeing. This was simply too much for the resistance to fight against. A ground assault had already destroyed half of their forces, not to forget several civilians who got caught in the crossfire, or were simply murdered. Even Makoto understood the grave danger her people were in. Both her and Kushina could cause vital damage to the enemy's ground forces. However, it would leave their people open for an air strike, and the Valkyrie squadron led by Knight Deidara was known for their accuracy and brutality. "Kushina, fall back. Go towards the center of the base and create the barrier. I'll get our front line forces back," suggested Makoto, and was relieved when her friend just gave a nod. "What about the reinforcements Kakashi promised us? We can't hold on for more than 20 minutes, answered Kushina nervously, and the grim look on her friend's face was certainly not helping in improving her morale. "It would take 2 hours for reinforcements to arrive. It's the best Kakashi can promise at this point of time. We have to hold this base till then," said Makoto frankly. There was no point in giving false hope to her friend. Everyone needed to know that their chances of survival were slim to none, but that didn't mean they would go down without a fight. "Then let's do our best," replied Kushina confidently, and started retreating towards the center of the base. Makoto's gaze shifted towards the 30 resistance soldiers who were fighting on their front lines, including her only son. Whatever the situation may be, she had to get them back to the safety. Her Mangekyo Sharingan came to life as she gathered a large amount of chakra. It was time for payback. Konoha Cemetery. A person could currently be seen standing inside the barren blacklight cemetery. Despite the cold atmosphere, the boy continued to stand in the same position, his eyes glancing towards a single tombstone. Naruto Namikaze. A small bitter smile came on his lips as he hesitantly placed his fingers on the piece of stone. The words on the stone brought a lot of painful memories back to his mind. "What are you going to do?" asked a new dark voice, making him sigh. "Since when did you start showing interest in my mundane affairs, Kyuubi? Last I checked, you were enjoying while I was being tortured in hell," replied Naruto icily. It was fair to say that he did not share a good relationship with his supposed partner. In a way, both of them were stuck with each other. "You were quite the actor. For a moment even I believed you were a fool who didn't remember anything," mocked the giant fox. Instead of receiving a rhetoric response, the fox was met with deadly silence as the boy who had defeated him and that fake Madara simply stared at his own tombstone. "Whenever you live, there's always war," said Naruto sadly, as he glanced at the entire cemetery that contained various graves of his deceased comrades. You naive fool. That's the nature of mankind," scolded the ancient Biju. Sometimes the ignorance of humans certainly got on his nerves, and his current host was a box full of mysteries. "I believed that by killing Madara and stopping you, this world can have a second chance, that it can learn from its past mistakes and move towards a better future. For that I sacrificed everything. I broke the promise which I made to Mikasa and Rangaku. I left Kushina alone despite promising to be by her side and treat her as an equal. I abandoned my family, suffered 300 years in hell, for what?" asked Naruto frustratedly. And now it was the Biju who had no answer for that question. Perhaps it was due to the fact that the boy was right, or the Biju simply didn't care about humans anymore. "You're fully aware of what is going on in this world, aren't you?" asked Kyuubi seriously. "Yes. And are you going to pretend that it doesn't concern or bother you anymore? What does it matter to you?" asked Naruto sarcastically, and grinned when the Biju instantly stopped from speaking any further. For a beast who hated humans, Kyuubi certainly seemed quite interested in their mundane affairs. Talk about irony. thought Naruto bemusedly. Naruto simply settled for staring at the graves of his friends. At this very moment his people were dying. His father, his mother, his brother were in danger. Rangaku and Kenshin were about to fight a suicidal battle. Innocent men, women and children were being murdered. His beloved village was destroyed and was nothing but a relic of the past. In the midst of all this chaos, there was only one question passing through his heart. What was he supposed to do? Was he really ready or even willing to join a revolution? Did he actually possess the power to change the world? I will not give up. Rangaku's words still echoed in his heart. How could he possibly explain to her that he was not the same person anymore? That he had changed. Whichever person got attached to him always went through pain and suffering. First his mother, then Kenshin, Armin, Kotetsu, Aoba, and so many more. In his quest for change, he had sacrificed everything. His morals, his beliefs, his love, his humanity. Even then the world was in the same stage of conflict and warfare. Maybe you're right, you're no leader, said Kyuubi frankly, and surprisingly he received an affirmative nod from his host. I'm no leader, Kyuubi. I never was, I just wanted to be a human, replied Naruto passively, and instead of another taunt his Biju simply settled for giving him a blank stare. And your brother, what will you do about him? He will die, if you don't save him. You will lose him along with every person you ever cared about, said Kyuubi honestly. If there was one thing he liked about Naruto was his honesty. The boy had never lied to the Biju about his feelings, even calling him a beast on their first meeting. And even if he was reluctant to admit it, the Biju had certainly developed an interest in seeing the choices this boy would make. After all, in the 1,000 years of his existence the Biju had never seen a human like Naruto. Even the gods were willing to break the rules for him. Destiny was willing to form as per this boy's wishes. People were willing to follow him to the depths of hell without any questions, and the only thing standing in the way was Naruto himself. Naruto patiently sat on a sharp ridge of a mountain. His eyes were currently fixed on a large red-colored barrier in which several people were taking shelter. There were at least 2,700 soldiers surrounding the barrier, all of them wearing the same uniform. Not to mention the 100-something fighter squadrons in the sky, that were constantly bombarding the barrier with explosives, hoping to tear it apart. And within an hour or so, they would definitely tear the barrier apart. And the people taking refuge in it would have nowhere else to go after that. This was their last stand. He could feel a lot of familiar chakra signatures inside that barrier. People, friends, family. He knew almost all of them. His eyes shifted towards the sword lying idly on his side. The warrior inside of him knew very well that if he picked up that blade again then there would be no going back. That's rough, said Kyuubi mirthlessly, as he watched the humans trapped like rats inside the giant barrier. Without any help or reinforcements, they're dead, answered Naruto flatly. His years of experience in the special forces easily presented the final outcome of this battle between the resistance and the Empire's forces. They have you. A low growl escaped from the fox's mouth, when he saw his host reluctantly staring at the weapon beside him. The Biju knew why Naruto was so hesitant, and with good reason. The boy was scared of killing people, scared of sinning even if it was for the greater good. After the death god punished his soul for committing sins, Naruto simply didn't want to get into any kind of mess that could put himself in trouble. It was only a basic survival instinct which every human and animal had in themselves. But right now, the boy's family and friends were trapped in that barrier, along with other resistance members. Despite pretending to be uncaring about the affairs of the human world, the ancient fox knew these few soldiers were the only ones standing between him and Madara. If the Akatsuki got their hands on all the tailed beasts, then it would be very bad for him and the rest of the world. And the only one who even had a remote chance of stopping Madara was none other than Naruto. So, if it meant helping the boy for his own survival, then the fox was willing to put aside his hatred for humanity. The question was, whether Naruto would do the right thing or not. I don't know if I can defeat so many soldiers. I'm just one man, argued Naruto, making his partner sigh in frustration. Look, you've got the juice. You can smite every fucking soldier down there and send them all back to hell, encouraged Kyuubi reluctantly. For once he was relieved that no other tailed beast was here, or they would have laughed their off when they saw him motivating a mere human. But I don't remember how, said Naruto silently, his voice sounding like a nervous child who was about to venture into an unknown territory. It's in there. I'm sure it will be as easy as making ramen, suggested Kyuubi, and his eyebrows twitched when Naruto gave him a blank stare. I don't know how to do that either. The giant fox face-palmed on hearing the boy's honest yet silly answer, but then again who could have thought that the greatest hero of the shinobi world sucked at cooking? My bad, thought Kyuubi tiredly, and settled for staring at the boy. After a few moments, Naruto reluctantly picked up his sword and looked towards his partner. This is a bad idea, answered Naruto doubtfully, as the fox got a wide grin on his face. I don't know, I believe in little miracles. A small squad of Sealing Corps was engaged in their tiresome efforts of deactivating the barrier in which the resistance was hiding. One of them looked at the 3 clone troopers guarding them. Granted, the rebel soldiers would not dare to attack them, as it would crumble their barrier. But they were far too close, and these troopers may not care about their lives. However, the Sealing Corps certainly did. That's why when they saw a young man approaching from the west side, they immediately ceased their efforts and diverted the attention of their guards towards the intruder. As the person came closer, the leader of the Sealing Corps froze in terror. How could he ever forget those blonde hair and dark eyes? The 3 clone troopers immediately pointed their weapons towards the man, but he fearlessly approached towards them, his hands tightly grasping a sharp, long sword in his hand. Hey, I know you, but you were dead, said the leader nervously. The clone troopers jumped towards the man, but one quick slash and the very next second, the strongest soldiers of the Empire were nothing more than masses of blood dispersed on the plain snowy surface. I've heard that a lot, said Naruto calmly, as the 2 men of the Sealing Corps tried to stab him with their tanto. With a quick duck, the former Konoha ninja evaded the attacks only to use his dangerous sword to slice open the necks of the soldiers of the Sealing Corps, their bodies falling to the ground with a resonating thud. The leader of the Sealing Corps immediately started running back towards their main camp, only to come face to face with Naruto standing in front of him. How the hell did he travel so fast? I don't think running will save you, replied Naruto icily, and plunged his sword deep into the man's heart. A painful scream was made by the man, his eyes becoming wide as saucers before closing for the last time as he fell dead on the ground. That's a start, said Kyuubi smugly, and was surprised when even Naruto gave him an affirmative nod. I'm just getting started. Barrier. A group of people were currently taking refuge inside a semi-destroyed building. Fear was clearly evident in their eyes. Sakura was busy in trying to save a heavily injured Kiba, who was hanging between life and death. Kushina was sitting in the center of the room, her eyes were closed and hands clasped together. A large amount of chakra was being used by the kunoichi in order to maintain the barrier that was the last line of defense between the enemy forces and what was left of their resistance cell. Rangaku's Blacklight squad was stationed outside the building, the special ops soldiers observing each and every movement of the enemy forces. Shino had spread his bugs all across the barrier in order to detect any breach, with Hinata acting as his scout by providing her 360-degree vision. Ino was busy in trying to contact their main resistance cell, hoping to get into contact with their leader, Kakashi. In the middle of room, Makoto was currently surrounded by Sasuke and Itachi, who were glaring daggers at her. From the expression on their faces, the 2 young soldiers were quite furious at her. We should be out there, Makoto-sama, said Sasuke frankly. He's right, Ka-san. There is no use in hiding like cowards, they will eventually break through. At least send a few of us, we will hold the enemy forces and prevent their attempts to break this barrier, explained Itachi persistently, and was irritated when a snort was heard. Their gaze shifted towards the tall man who had arrived with Rangaku, and he certainly didn't look very pleased with them. Makoto looked at the man skeptically. She trusted Rangaku and wanted to trust this man. Not only had he helped in protecting the Resistance's frontline forces, but was also a blacklight-level ninja and possessed a lot of knowledge about tactics and warfare, not to forget about Konoha. "Both of you are idiots," said Kenshin, and smirked when the boys looked at him furiously. "What did you say?" asked Sasuke intimidatingly, but Kenshin just flicked the boy's forehead, sending him straight towards the other corner of the room. "Hey, what are you?" Whatever words Itachi wanted to say were left unsaid, when Kenshin grabbed him by the collar and brought him very close to his face. And for the first time, Itachi felt a very strong power radiating from this man, not to mention his dangerous murderous eyes were making him feel uneasy. "You're a good fighter, but a pathetic squad leader." "I see, Naruto was the ace in that department," said Kenshin seriously, and was intrigued when the nervous boy stopped fidgeting and was now looking at him with his best intimidating gaze. "How do you know my brother?" asked Itachi icily, his hands edging towards his kunai pouch. "I was the one who trained your brother. Your irrational decisions would lead to the deaths of these people, and you are not the commander of this base. So, listen to the chain of command and follow your orders like a good soldier," scolded Kenshin, and gave a gentle kick to Itachi's chest, knocking the air out of the boy's lungs. "That's enough," commanded Makoto, when she saw Itachi falling on his knees grasping for breath. Kenshin turned towards the Uchiha, and one look was enough to remind him of a certain someone. Now he understood who she was. "So, you're the leader of this base and the mother of Naruto Namikaze. It's an honor to meet you, Makoto Uchiha, or shall I say Namikaze," offered Kenshin, and gave a short respectful bow while the Uchiha remained impassive. "Who are you, really?" asked Makoto seriously, her Mangekyo Sharingan certainly taking Kenshin by surprise. The duo was interrupted when Rangaku came running through the room, and the girl certainly seemed quite surprised. Maybe it had something to do with the enemy communication device, which she had taken from a dead trooper's outfit with the intent of listening to enemy communications. What surprised Makoto was the short bow which Rangaku gave to Kenshin, and gave him the communication device. When Makoto was the leader of this base and Rangaku's commanding officer. "Sensei, Makoto-sama, you need to listen to this," said Rangaku urgently. "Sensei," thought a surprised Makoto, so her assumptions were indeed correct. Kenshin was a blacklight. The newly found information and the trust which Rangaku was showing in this man was certainly enough to dispel any lingering doubts which Makoto had about the man. She stepped beside the duo, and focused her attention towards the static voices coming from the small communication device. "The enemy forces are in a disarray," said Rangaku hopefully. "Reinforcements?" asked Kenshin quickly, but was disappointed when the girl shook her head in disapproval. "It's something else," replied Rangaku, and Makoto quickly turned towards her soldiers. "Is there anyone who got left behind? Itachi, Sasuke, did any of your friends disobey my orders of staying inside this barrier? Answer me right now, or be ready for 2 months of detention," barked Makoto furiously, as the boys flinched and quickly started their observation. "I see from where Naruto gets his good looks and leadership skills," thought Kenshin bemusedly. After a few moments, both the boys finished their inspection and came towards Makoto. "Everyone who is alive is inside this barrier," said Itachi confidently, and was backed up by Sasuke. "Are you sure?" asked Makoto sharply, her eyes boring into her young son's very soul. "Yes, Ka-san." After intimidating her son for a few seconds, and finding no traces of deceit, she ordered the boys to go back towards their group. Besides, it was a well-known fact that Itachi was a very poor liar and certainly not a good actor. Unlike his elder brother, who was a master in the art of deceit and lies. "This is Squad 6, we are being attacked." The resistance soldiers listened carefully, as the enemy communication was heard on the device. The voice of the next person was quite well known, and judging from the fury in Makoto and Rangaku's eyes, these kunoichi knew the person. "Who's attacking you?" Squad 6 inches asked Hidan nonchalantly. The former Akatsuki seemed quite confident in his victory. "It's a single ninja." "What?" barked Hidan in shock. How could a single ninja attack an entire squad of clone troopers? And the same question was visible on the surprised resistance trio who were also listening to the intercepted message. "Ah, this is Squad 17, watch your flan. Ah, what the hell is going on out there?" yelled Hidan angrily. "He's too fast. Kami, what's going on out there? Captain, send more men towards the west direction, suppress those terrorists now," commanded Hidan. The channel went dark, as Makoto looked towards Rangaku, who was quite shocked. But what confused her was the grin that came on Kenshin's face. "Better late than never, Naruto." West side. A lone boy wearing civilian clothes could be seen standing on one side, his large trench coat protecting him from the cold winds that were hitting his body and making his hair flow wildly in the air. A blood-stained sword could be seen in his right hand, as he calmly looked at the 400 enemy troops that had gathered in front of him. "What is he, a tax accountant?" asked the leader clone trooper. "No information is available about him, Captain. Except, he's extremely dangerous," replied his subordinate officer crisply. "Troopers, Hidan-sama has ordered us to finish him off." "Get ready," commanded the clone captain. "Roger, Roge." The clone army was shocked when their leader and 20 other clones were blown off as a sharp sword laced with chakra was sent straight through their ranks. Their gaze shifted towards the attacker, who was simply flexing his wrists. Attack! The ground started shaking as the large enemy force started charging towards Naruto, who surprisingly stood in his position. The boy certainly looked calm and composed, despite the hundreds of bloodthirsty enemy forces who were just about to rip him to shreds. "Are you going to do something, idiot?" asked an irritated Kyuubi. He would have pounced on the opportunity on killing so many humans. And it was not as if Naruto had not killed, he had certainly obliterated 4 entire enemy squads in his carnage. Very well. A monstrous amount of chakra was released from the boy's body. The impact was even more powerful than the combined tremors which the ground was previously making due to the charge of the massive enemy force. The ice around the area melted within seconds, and transformed into a large lake. For a moment the enemy's charge was disrupted, but as a proof of their strength they quickly regained their footing and resumed their charge towards the Namikaze air. But the mindless clones could not realize what Kyuubi had just sensed. And his assumptions were proved correct when Naruto made a single-hand seal, and the water in the lake rose rapidly in the sky and quickly started dispersing into single particles, streams of liquid. Sweden no jutsu, water release, water bullet technique. In a sheer display of force, the entire lake transformed into countless sharp, needle-like water bullets as Naruto simply pointed his finger towards the incoming forces. Kurama was left speechless when the once strong 400 clone troopers started to get butchered. Mercilessly, many of them tried to deflect the water bullets, but the attacks instead broke through their swords and ended their pitiful existence. Not only was the attack extremely fast and strong, but it was simply too large. Within 30 seconds, where once stood a 400-strong enemy force lay a massive pool of blood. Combined with the water, it had transformed the position into a large red-colored pond. Kushina had said the boy was strong in water style, but this was, thought a speechless Kyuubi. He watched warily as his host simply walked on the blood-stained pond and picked up his sword as well as the several kunai, shuriken and exploding tags which were lying idly in the now useless armor of the deceased clone army. The former Nadaime Taiko quickly placed the newly acquired arsenal in the various pockets of his trench coat, while firmly grabbing his sword in his right hand. His eyes closed for a brief moment, as everything went deadly silent. The fox was intrigued when his partner simply charged towards the front with his eyes closed, one hand grasping his sword while the other resting close to the pocket where he had placed his newly acquired weapons. The visage of the entire clone army appeared in front of them. Apparently the enemy had realized this new development and had formulated a single line of defense. Everywhere silhouettes of fierce clone troopers could be seen, not to mention the 100-something birds in the sky who were moving towards them. Instead of charging straight through the enemy ranks, Naruto jumped in the air and to everyone's surprise he started floating higher and higher in the air. The bombing squadron of the Empire fired several exploding tags towards him from the sky, Even the fox tensed a little when several exploding tags reached around Naruto, and lit up like firecrackers. Boom! Hidan sighed in relief when several large explosions occurred in the air. He was simply glad that the mysterious warrior was now dead. Oh, he was so wrong. To his dismay, the giant explosions started getting absorbed in a dark portal, and a closer look showed him his greatest nightmare. It can't be, it's impossible, yelled Hidan in fear, as there standing in the sky was his greatest opponent, Naruto Namikaze. One of the boy's eye was displaying the Mangekyo Sharingan, while the other had a totally different colored eye. To add further to his fears, he saw Deidara quickly retreating away from his squadron, while ordering his men to face the newly arrived god of war. You're on your own, Hidan. I'm going to inform the emperor, yelled Deidara mischievously, and laughed on seeing the horror on his comrade's face. Get back here, Deidara. We're in this together, said Hidan worriedly, but the blonde simply shrugged his shoulders. It's your operation and you are the commander. I was just helping you, but I've got some better things to do, replied Deidara. You bastard. The bomber was alarmed when he saw Naruto raising his hands towards him and his forces. And the Namikaze was certainly looking at him. What makes you think that you can escape, my fellow traitor? Asked Naruto darkly. Deidara blanched on hearing that threat, and quickly took control of his bird. He had to get out of here, fast. Kyuubi sensed a tremendous amount of chakra being gathered by his host, and judging from the appearance of the boy's new activated eyes, the Biju had a pretty good assumption what the boy was about to do. Don't do it, you will shorten your life with this level of attack, warned Kyuubi, as the boy simply glared at the entire enemy force and the former two Akatsuki members. His right eye shined brightly, as he finished gathering his chakra, ignoring the terrified looks on Hidan and Deidara's faces. Naruto, what are you doing? Asked Hidan nervously. He wanted to flee, but the fear of Madara's wrath was keeping him from running away. The power of all of them, thought Kyuubi in fear, as Naruto closed his eyes. I will never forget my people's pain, thought Naruto sadly, as memories of his destroyed village came flooding back in his heart. His home was destroyed by these savages, the village for which he had fought, bled and even died was destroyed for the empire and the Akatsuki's selfish motives. So, many of his friends and family members had given their lives to protect Konoha, only to be destroyed for one man's ambition. The Akatsuki was even now trying to murder his family. It made him furious. An eye for an eye was the motto of the ninja world, and he would remind the empire of the power of the ninja world. He opened his eyes and gave one final glare to his terrified enemies. From here on out, the empire will know pain. A bright blinding light spread across the entire sky, as two words were heard in the entire area.